Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes smarter and cooler in Highschool DxD part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Elemental Nations, vote. Finally, after nearly 36 hours of non-stop fighting, the forces of Obito Uchiha had gathered to wage this war to capture the final two Jinchuriki in the Elemental Nations, plus his own final showdown against Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto Uzumaki could lie down for a break. When the old man sage told him that there was no other way to defeat his mother besides sealing her away for all eternity, Naruto was determined to find another way. Hell, everyone deserved a second chance, and there was just something that bothered Naruto about the woman's past, chakra fruit-induced insanity or not. At first it seemed like nothing Naruto could do might get through to the woman, but Naruto eventually managed a bond with which to befriend the goddess. This bond happened to yet again involve the loneliness of himself when he was young and the progenitor of chakra after she first ate the chakra fruit, yet before the black Zetsu formed. He did discover though that such a bond was hindered by the black Zetsu that leeches onto her very being. It wasn't hard to come to the conclusion that this was the source of Kaguya's change after eating the chakra fruit, although why it never physically manifested until she was first sealed by her children was a little confusing to him. Still, upon removing Kaguya's arm that housed the Zetsu manifestation shortly before finally sealing her, Naruto saw the glimpse in her eyes of realization. Naruto knew that she knew he had no choice to stop because he and his friends were all committed with their attacks beyond where they could pull back. Despite this fact, Naruto wouldn't change a thing, much like his recent encounter with Sasuke. Naruto, you must take the power from him. Infinite Tsukiyomi must be stopped and we need to go. Kaguya said in a stern tone of voice, yet holding a sense of urgency. Naruto didn't exactly understand why the seal old man sage gave them to use on Kaguya failed and how she was revived, but frankly the young Uzumaki didn't care. Yes, Kaguya ending Sasuke's life did hurt to some extent, if only because after all Naruto had been through to not kill him and bring him back to face his crimes under proper trial and summary judgment. Sakura asked him to bring Sasuke back all those years ago, and while Naruto respected her enough as a person to let the Uchiha live, thus far no one Sasuke had ever acted against could be considered an unforgivable crime. And yet, his most recent action after saving the world, which by proxy would have exonerated him of all prior actions, could have been that one unforgivable crime to completely damn him if Naruto hadn't stopped him. Sasuke was trying to kill his teammate, and even while the blonde could defend against and survive everything thrown at him while still holding back, he wasn't certain that stopping Sasuke, whether at a more permanent cost of life or limb, would ever stop the message his ideals held. Basically by leaving Sasuke alive, judged and properly interned for his crimes or their deaths at each other's hands, could backfire in the bigger picture. In death, Naruto becomes a martyr for peace, yet hatred, especially from the few that might still believe in Sasuke's ideals, would remain with no deterrent. And what is stopping the cycle of revenge from going on with their deaths anyway? So both of them dying wasn't an answer. Sasuke living and being punished was a completely different matter. Yes, there was a chance everything could turn out alright, and Naruto was leaning towards this outcome with his battle, knowing that if Sasuke ever went back to the darkness, he would just beat the shit out of him yet again. But yet, that same idea could turn out to be similar to what happened with Madara and Hashirama. Sasuke could be fine, but the simple fact is someone down the line might agree with his ideals and lead forth the call of more war. Worse still if Sasuke managed to find someone at or near their own levels of strength. Naruto wasn't one to stew over what could happen, but yet the result now before him will have to do. Kaguya's arrival and subsequent execution of Sasuke places the burden of hatred directly on her, but apparently both Naruto and herself were needed elsewhere. She said something about a disturbance in the dimensional gap and the system of miracles can no longer be contained. It was strange why he was needed to go, but before that could happen, she was adamant that he be the one to end Infinite Tsukiyomi by taking and using the sage's chakra remnant as his own from Sasuke's corpse. Granny Rabbit, if I go with you, I need to say goodbye to 3 people first. I will not bend on this, and if you try to take me away without allowing me to see them, then nothing will stop me from ensuring you never see the light of day again. Naruto said, while thinking of how his leaving and Sasuke's death would affect the world beyond the war fallout. You're sure about this, Naruto? We'll be with you the entire way for whatever you decide, and with all of Father's gift, you can seal her away right now if you wish. What about your mates? Do you think they'll take your decision to just up and leave with the person that is ultimately behind all that just happened well in any form? Kurama said, making the Kyuubi an obvious devil's advocate. Yet Kurama was speaking for all the Bijuu, and it knew for certain Naruto would do as he wished, regardless of attempt to dissuade him. Verbal, later. Why are you wasting time? There are things beyond even my control going on in the void that expands past the dimensional gap. We are needed now and you will come because of your besting myself in battle. Kaguya snapped, as she didn't have time for this, but to use force would be an issue she couldn't afford if their battle before had shown her. Zetsu may have clouded her morals, but Naruto showed her power doesn't necessarily mean she can win. There was a quality here in the blonde Jinchuriki before her that could prove vital for creation itself, which has been lost for millennia. The rabbit goddess needed to observe Naruto himself to begin with, but how he might affect the current events involved beyond the abyss could bring an even greater treasure. The boy had a different aura about him from the short time she witnessed him during their fight, both when she was lucid and under Zetsu's influence until now. He has only been with a few humans and the portions of her chakra inside of him, so this may be a fast track to failure for all she knew. But hey, if she is right, and she always is, then this will be a trial by fire to solving an age-old question. How does a creator of existence come to be? Granny Rabbit. Naruto screamed while attempting to put his own face no more than a centimeter from her own. The guy immediately backhanded the boy who caught her off guard. She hated that blasted name. You will call me Kaguya-sama. Any further transgressions for saying something other than my name will not end well for you. I always get what I want. Naruto then caught her hand in mid-swing with some of her chakra from his seal, while waved his physical hands off in a manner of surrender. What was with him? How did she lose to him again? Some things really are beyond even her control. At least he finally seemed to have taken the power from Indra's incarnation. Fine. Where are these females you wish to see? I can bring them before you. Now hold on Granny Rabbit, this is getting out of hand, boy. My name is Kaguya-sama, learn it or pay. Granny Rabbit. Kaguya-sama. Granny Rabbit. Kaguya-sama. Granny Rabbit. Kaguya-sama. Kaguya-sama. Granny Rabbit. Kaguya-sama. Now see here I say my name is Granny Rabbit and my word is law. Yes Granny Rabbit. Naruto said before continuing his speech and completely ignoring the negative emotions rolling off of the now much cuter woman. Must be all that darkness she lost. Hell, there was quite a few pounds of it. The guy meanwhile was bordering on a mental breakdown which was held off only by the constant mantra, must not kill the boy, must not kill the boy, must not kill the boy. Now as I was saying, my clones will be by their sides. Look for several copies of my shiny orange beacon of hope, trademark pending. Naruto trailed off as the negative emotions coming from her were starting to form creepy deformed ghost-like objects and very literal racing twitches over her eyes. Byakugan stare down in full effect. Immediately Kaguya took Naruto by the back of his jacket through one of her dimensions and proceeded to drop Naruto off. She made certain to get him high in the air and positive that he was going to land on his skull before going to get the people he wanted to say something to. Kagaya's personal world, dimensional gap. Naruto fell from on high as Kaguya let him go freely upside down. He made things simple by calling on Kurama's chakra and using limbs to flip himself upright and promptly kipped up to his feet. One by one almost simultaneously all his clones that were waiting for Kaguya died as dimension portals opened, gently allowing Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, and Karen Uzumaki to join him and Kaguya in this space. Naruto-kun. 3 voices shouted all at once, almost in sync. Naruto knew this was going to be difficult for the girls to accept, but yet it must be done. Hinata-chan, Ino-chan, Karen-chan. Guess what? Naruto couldn't help but feel like a tool for leaving them hanging, but goddammit how was he supposed to say that he had finally brought peace to their lives and subsequently had to leave them for who only knew how long. It was one of those things that just made him look like a womanizer, worse yet because he was leaving with another woman that gave no hint on should he ever be coming back. Jiraiya would be rolling over in his grave because if he knew Naruto was turning down 3 hot young girls for 1 hot old hag, Naruto would be up Schitt's Creek with 1,000 years of death for a paddle. Naruto-kun, what's wrong? The war is over isn't it? Why don't you look happy? Hinata asked. The Hyuga princess girl could see the distress on Naruto's face and couldn't help but feel that she would need to be stronger now on an emotional level than ever before in her 16 years of life. Hey Naruto, who's this old lady? Where are we and why did she bring us here? I can't feel anybody anywhere, so we're not near the battlefield. In fact I can't feel any chakra at all, anywhere. How is this possible? We should be dead by all rights. Leave it to Karen to bring up the most obvious questions when one is trying to avoid the most painful answers. First off girls, let me be clear. You're in no harm being in Granny Rabbit's presence. Yeah, she's creepy and more than a little buttertrite now, but she won't hurt you. As Naruto said this, the negative emotions coming from the female progenitor of chakra spiked in a way that yet again started to physically affect the surrounding environment and much more prominently directed towards Naruto. It was starting to make him sweat, but it only strengthened his resolve in teasing the woman. If she starts using her emotions, she'll adjust to his company so much faster. Naruto-kun, saying something like that only brings to light the fact that this woman, whoever she is, was at one point someone who tried to harm you. This in no way paints a good light on her, no matter if you somehow pulled a face heel switch on her like you've done with so many others before. And people wonder why you're sometimes called Ninja Jesus. In fact, given recent events that we were last aware of, what happened with Madara and how was this woman connected to him is the most appropriate question I can think of right now. Ino said, obviously thinking things through. Yes, you are right, Ino-chan. But really, I hate Ninja Jesus, it's so 2009. Now, Granny Rabbit here. Kaguya-sama. Kaguya yelled, flinging a large stone directly at Naruto's face which he narrowly avoided. As I was saying, Granny Rabbit won't harm any of you. Naruto finished as Kaguya opened a dimensional portal behind Naruto's head and smacked him with a force that sent him hurtling towards a large rock slightly behind and to the right of Karen. Yeah, won't hurt any of you, Naruto said in a muffled voice before dusting off his shoulders and crawled over to Karen. Nothing like a good blow to the head to get you in line, is there? Karen said as she began healing Naruto's accumulated injuries over the course of the past day and a half. Who are you kidding, we both know she'll get what's coming to her in time. Anyway, yes, Ino-chan, Kaguya was in some way a part of the war. In fact, I haven't seen a better musician around when it comes to playing people. She played everyone including Madara through Zetsu. Zetsu was a creation that was made with a specific purpose to revive the Juubi, and while he really took the dance to a high level, he was somehow just a tool. I don't know why, but I really don't care either. What I do know is that Zetsu was corrupting Kaguya's mind, and it probably has something to do with that chakra fruit that old man Sage said she ate some thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, can I please get some skincare tips? You look absolutely amazing for being so old, Kaguya-sama, Ino said, gushing in excitement from her own fashion guru mindset. The more things change, eh? Ino, now is not the time. Hinata stated, knowing that something important was going on. The Byakugan the elder woman possessed was plain enough to see some distant relation between herself, but that wasn't what this was about. Naruto-kun, why did you bring us here with Lady Kaguya then? You're not done yet, are you? Oh, Hinata, bless her hearts. They are so round and full, always thinking of everyone. Verbal, I swear to God, if you don't stop perving on my girlfriends. You wouldn't be thinking that if you actually met some gods, Naruto. In fact, I think you change your tune very quickly. Especially since you already have 3 girlfriends. Naruto quickly shut off his mental connection with Kurama and the other Biju momentarily while he sorted out the situation. Although he couldn't help but agree with the furball and how cute his ladies were. But still he didn't appreciate them getting perved on, even if it was Kurama who would always be with him, and as such new details about things better left unsaid, he really didn't need to hear about how good his mom was in bed again. Yes, Hinata-chan, it seems there is never a shortage of work for a man who can almost infinitely replicate himself and his abilities, you know, that gives me an interesting idea. Hold on a minute please. Reopening the connection, he called out to Kurama, furball. Got a question for you. First he tells me to shut up, then he needs to ask me something. What next, is he going to make a body for me? Who knows what the future may hold, furball. Anyway, you said old man Sage could create stuff with his 6 paths in Jutsu and the Rinnegan, right? Just where are you going with this, Naruto? I was wondering if it is possible for me to use that in conjunction with my shadow clones to essentially let the girls still live on with me, even if I won't be present. Besides, it would help the world in general if they think I'm still around to protect the peace we fought for. Hit, you do realize that you would technically be creating a Biju, right? Because, no matter how you try, even with your clones, you can't give them life in the same sense as your girls. And are you making just one, or would you be giving each girl their own slice of happiness? Making a Biju out of my shadow clones. I'm going to change the world in more ways than just bringing peace, huh? You keep thinking like that, and I'll have to kill you before you turn into an Uchiha, kid. Anyway, basically you'll need to have Senjutsu ready and focus on it like if you were making truth-seeking balls by combining all elements into the one all-encompassing, life-giving element, but without making an actual truth-seeking ball. You will also need to use the powers of the Rinnegan you took from Sasuke's corpse in order to end infinite Tsukiyomi, in essence to bend the laws of this world under your will. You need to do these things at the same time, kid, without using a shadow clone either. You will also need to focus on how much chakra you'll be giving your creation as part of creating this new life, which is going to be so heavily laden in natural chakra that you may accidentally put more into the clone than might be necessary. Once you have these aspects down, only then will you be able to create the clone you'll be making. Please don't screw up, kid. Naruto shut off the connection while he gathered Senjutsu and began to focus on the substance of truth-seeking balls. It seemed like he had a headache forming when he started to also focus on using the Rinnegan to bend the world to his own will. This seemed like it would be an easier task alone, but combining it with the element of truth-seeking balls was extremely trying. As he began to focus on how much chakra he would give his creation, the headache began to get worse and his nose started bleeding. He decided to focus roughly 5 taels worth of Kurama's chakra for his personal Biju clone and was about to make the clone when he suddenly dropped to his knee in pain, slightly disrupting his already straining concentration and causing the girls to worry, with Kaguya looking on in wonder. The cloud of smoke appeared next to Ino, and everyone except Kaguya went over to Naruto out of concern, while keeping an eye on the cloud. Kaguya had a massive shit-eating grin on her face that looked so disturbing, Naruto felt like maybe he was pushing the teasing of her too far. There were just some things that shouldn't be seen. Damn it kid, I told you not to screw up. You used way too much of our chakra and you weren't concentrating properly. Oh my god databane. A female voice came from the cloud of smoke. A female voice that sounded very much like Naruto's girl form via his sexy jutsu. He didn't. Ino practically screamed. I think he did, but this probably wasn't the initial intention, Ino-chan Hinata said. Girls, have I told you lately just how much I love you? Naruto said, cringing in fear of Kurama after he messed up while wiping the blood away from his nose. Oh yes, come to mama baby. Karen said lecherously, fingers already moving eagerly in grabbing motions. Verbal call you tell me what will happen because of my screw up at least. Suddenly in a burst of speed, the cloud of smoke vanished, and the very naked girl in it was next seen motorboating Kaguya's. It was rather difficult, given the clothing on the goddess, but the female Naruto clone was tearing into Kaguya's clothes at a pace that was hard for the goddess to keep up undressed. It's beautiful, Kurama said, obviously loving the show between the newest Biju and the progenitor of chakra. Anyway kid, your girl has roughly the same amount of chakra as the two of us combined. Also, I see a slight connection between the girl's life and your girlfriend's lifespans, tying them all together, yourself included. I don't know what this means or how it happened, but somehow I get the feeling that your girls may have changes of their own in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if it is because of the senjutsu. You better hope that Granny can bring us back, because this could be important. That's enough. Kaguya screamed as she suddenly slammed her fist into the head of the girl wrapped around her body, with no avail as the girl still kept her grip. Naruto-chan. Hinata suddenly said, speaking to the girl in an effort to help the much more powerful woman who obviously had a connection to her own clan. Yes by the way, I'd prefer to be called Naruko. It suits myself a little more. Anyway Hinata-chan, when did you get so sexy? Lem have a taste. The now named Naruko cooed as she all but disappeared from a flustered Kaguya's person and appeared on Hinata, who was now lying on the ground while Naruko squeezed her. Ooh oh. Hinata moaned in obvious pleasure at the sudden and very pleasant touch. Okay Naruko-chan, I think that's enough. Naruto said, starting to get back to his feet. Naruto-sama. Can I please have a taste of your sweet nectar before you leave? We don't even know if you'll ever see us again. So please, take your daughter's first time and let all my mothers join us. Pretty please Naruko moaned out, as though she were suffering from some kind of heat. Naruto. We cannot waste any more time here. I let you have a chance to say goodbye to your mates, and you even left a present with them to remember you by. I will not wait any longer. We must go. Kaguya shouted out, negative emotions physically manifesting into scary rabbits and rushing at Naruto, causing physical injuries which by all rights were theoretically impossible, at his obvious disregard to her request. As the girls watched this event, they couldn't find any fault in Naruto's nickname for his newest friend. But yet, this woman was truly unique and suited Naruto's company almost perfectly. There was also an underlying hint of jealousy at the fact that Naruto would disappear with this very hot but so very old woman, while they were going to be stuck with a female Naruto for possibly the rest of their days, a female Naruto who is obviously incapable of bearing them children. How was that fair? Yeah Granny Rabbit, I love you too, give me 5 more minutes okay? Hinata-chan, Ino-chan, Karen-chan. Naruko-chan here will always be with you. She is basically what we'd consider a Biju made in my image, to always protect the peace of our home. I'll be taking all the other Biju with me. Please tell Granny Tsunade I'm sorry I had to leave, but there was no getting out of this. Also please tell her to announce what really happened with the Uchiha massacre all those years ago and ensure that she learns of how Sasuke wanted to kill everyone. Naruko can fill in all those details that Kakashi wasn't able to see. Sasuke is not a hero like his brother Itachi, and the Uchiha clan should not be looked upon so highly. I pray we meet again my loves, but we might not have the chance. However I can feel each of you inside me through my daughter, and I know that if you practice the same will hold true for each of you. We are now truly bonded in a way I can't say I fully understand yet, but I believe with all of my heart that we will see each other again. Naruto said, kissing the 3 of them goodbye before Naruko herself came up to him and shredded what was left of his shirt while kissing him deeply. Don't keep me waiting daddy. Naruko said into his ear as he was suddenly pulled by the back of his neck into another one of Kaguya's portals, and his vision was flooded with darkness. Underworld, private aerial arena. Issei couldn't believe it. It was a repeat of the raiding game between Ria's peerage and Riser's peerage, which had Riser dominating the fight when he went one-on-one with Riser and lost while his Butchu watched the whole event crying. And now, it was happening again. Issei had an edge that he gained from a deal with the sealed heavenly dragon, Drake, inside him, that he would grant him his balance breaker temporarily at the cost of a body part becoming like a dragon's, so Issei sacrificed his left arm. He thought it would be enough of a boost to allow him to defeat his high-class devil opponent and willingly took the risk. Unfortunately, Issei's biggest mistake now was that during his time in Balance Breaker, he wasted almost 4 seconds out of the 10 seconds he was given mouthing off to Riser about how he was going to beat him with the power of his boosted gear's Balance Breaker. There was actually a chance that Issei could have beaten Riser, but failed when his Balance Breaker ended just as he was about to deliver the final blow. What was worse is how his body couldn't handle the backlash of using dragon-type balance breaker so early in his life with the supernatural, leaving him at the mercy of a recovering Riser, who proceeded to brutalize him. Even Issei's usage of the holy water he got from Asia failed. In another time, another world, Issei would have used boosted gear gift to enhance the water to damage Riser both physically and mentally, but in this time, in this world, Riser caught on by enveloping himself in his phoenix flame, well ahead of Issei's telegraphed attack to evaporate the water before grabbing Issei's arm with the boosted gear, tore it right off, and threw it away. The pain Issei felt was in many ways more than when he had died as a human or had been stabbed with a light spear as a devil, mainly because with his loss, he was dooming his beloved Butchu to this acid, who would probably treat her like a glorified sex slave. After enduring a savage beating, Issei was grabbed by the neck and lifted up by this neck. You fought well for a piece of former human trash, not enough to pose a threat to me or this world, but still you fought well enough to injure me, and that does deserve praise. This is the end for you, Riser declared and put his fist through his chest where his heart was, lowly devil. Issei. Rhea screamed in despair, teleporting onto the battlefield as Riser pulled his flaming arm out of her pawn's chest. No. The tears were streaming down her face as the crimson-haired ruined princess watched the boy she thought could solve this problem, the boy she gave up all of her pawns for, and dare she think it, the boy she was beginning to fall in love with, be murdered before her very eyes by the man she hated more than anything in the world. He had no chance, but still, Ravel said to herself as she watched the fight from the procession room, unnerved at how Riser was dealing with the pawn, and saw as Issei fell face down onto the ground. This is too much. How does Ani-sama expect Rias to willingly accept defeat if he kills the pieces of hers that can later be used for his own benefit? I've seen this before. Issei thought, his body racked with pain as he saw his blood drip from Riser's arm. My blood, it's red just like her hair. An image of his lovely president, Rias Gremory, went through mind as his vision grew dark. Little did he realize that she was already cradling his head in her lap, sobbing in both the loss of Issei and fear of what is to come with Riser. Issei, you must stay strong. Brother, please get a doctor in here. You can't let Issei die, Rhea screamed out, hoping that her brother would get someone to Issei in time. The way the blood was flowing from his severed arm on top of the cauterized wound in his chest made it clear to her that Issei's time was short. Well, looks like the end of the line for you, Aibu. For us. Drake said, a bit sad that he was losing such an interesting host, as he felt himself leaving Issei. Out of all my bears, you were the most interesting, with your embarrassingly perverse way of life. Looks like it'll be a while before I find another host who'll face the white bastard. Issei said, facing the fading dragon in his mind. Here's to hoping that you receive a better life in the afterlife. One where you're not involved in the turmoil between the 3 factions and become an actual harem king. Sayonara, Aibu. Yeah. See ya, Drake, when fate brings us together again in a mountain of dot. Ugh, you just had to make it weird, as usual. Drake said in amusement before disappearing to parts unknown. But the boosted gear disappearing from Issei's severed arm, just as Akeno Himejima, Kaneko Taoju, Asia Argento, and Kibayudo appeared from a Gremory clan portal and ran toward him with tears in their eyes. President, everyone, I'm sorry, Issei muttered, the light disappearing from his eyes before Rias could say anything more. Issei Haidu is dead. Ugh. Why shed tears for that lowly peasant? He was nothing. Riser chided his fiancée with cockiness in his voice. Cradling Issei's corpse, Rias seethed and turned to a laughing Riser with rage in her eyes and her magical aura flaring just as a bright light sparked through the sky. Everyone looked up to see a portal opening up with something shooting out of it, surrounded by crimson flames, before crashing into the arena ways from Rias, her peerage, and Riser. Ow, damn it. Note to self. Use a wind jutsu to slow my descent, a voice groaned as the smoke clearing, showing a figure on his back with his legs up. The figure when kipped up and steadied himself on his legs before coughing and dusting himself off, showing his figure to all those present in the battlefield. He was wearing the tattered remains of a fishnet shirt, a hideously bright orange pair of cargo pants, and black and blue two-tone sandals that looked similar in some ways to ankle-high boots, yet held open toe areas which seemed quite odd. He had dirty blonde hair and bruises on his face and parts of his chest. His chest was toned as if he was an athlete of some kind, but he had a single scar across his chest that seemed to be exactly in line with where his heart would be. His face also had the most unique whisker marks, which made him look almost like an animal of some kind. The boy's eyes were also something that captivated everyone who could see them. The sclera of his eyes were a purplish color, with 4 rings throughout. 3 of the rings also had marks of some kind on them that looked remarkably similar to commas, with each ring bearing 3 marks for a total of 9. But the most confusing thing was how his eyes had a cross that almost looked like an addition symbol in the pupils, and what looked to be an orange eye shadow surrounding his eyes. Senjutsu? Kaneko said, alerting everyone to the power they already subconsciously felt but wasn't being directed at anyone in particular. You know of Senjutsu, pretty kitty? Wow, Granny Rabbit, I like this place already. I could do without the purple sky, though anyway, the name is Naruto Uzumaki. Where am I? Why is she crying? Naruto saw Ria's first and foremost after a quick look at the area. Why did a woman's tears always draw his attention and feel a need to beat someone senseless for making a woman cry? Looking around further, the ninja noticed the dead boy on the ground next to the beautiful redhead. Why was that boy just killed? If nobody answers me, I'm going to assume that everyone except for the redeeted god is sitting next to him crying is responsible and act accordingly. So who is the dead man I need to talk with to appease this soul lost well before his time? Naruto said to the group before him when a mass of negative emotions came up from behind him. Another lowly devil comes to interrupt my wedding day. Surziches, Riser demands to know what game you are playing. Am I to marry Rias or not? I faced your test and he failed, now this. Riser said, drawing Naruto's attention to him in full. You did this, I take it. Was there any need to kill the boy? Answer me, scum. Naruto said, getting more upset with each word and his body starting to cloak itself in a yellow energy. Please, help me. I will not marry that man, especially after he killed Issei. Ria said to Naruto. As she asked this of him, Naruto did a quick check on the man's power and decided it was best to completely overwhelm him in output, yet hold back on his most destructive attacks. This was obviously some wedding and sometimes important people were at these things, so his idea was push out enough power to scare most, while simultaneously giving a show that puts the girl in his protection, and all the while hold back the true scope of his power to those who might be out scouting possible enemies. Man, actually thinking like a ninja was hard work. So do you wish to challenge this Riser Phoenix? He died because he was weak, and the same will happen to you if you don't remove yourself from my sight. I have a wedding to continue. Asklin, people who speak of themselves in the third person are just begging to have a stick shoved in their ass. Naruto said as his energy began forming into a massive Kyuubi form, and a ball of energy that looked somewhat similar to Ria's power of destruction formed in the jaw where Naruto's hand was. Hit, you know what to do. Make sure this world knows just who they are dealing with. And give this fruitcake my best. I have a message for you, boy, with a biju that my father gave me screaming in my head so clearly. Riser, it's time to take it up the ass. Now, here is that stick for you, Biju Rasengan. Naruto shot toward Riser at speeds no one present on the battlefield could keep up with and slammed the ball into Riser's backside, just as Naruto said. Riser was sent hurtling through several rocks on the battlefield, breaking countless bones in his body at a pace that his regeneration couldn't keep up with, in healing and overtaxing what magic power he had left after his bout with the now dead Red Dragon Emperor. Naruto released his Kyuubi chakra mode as he felt the life energy of Riser fall down to barely survivable levels, knowing that he would have medical help soon enough. He walked over to the dead child because in all honesty the boy was a child that looked like he used to be barely the same age as Naruto. Granny Rabbit, is there anything you can do for the boy? Naruto asked, looking up at a woman floating in the air above everyone that none of Ria's peerage even noticed until the blonde looked directly at her. Little did Naruto know as he was speaking to his accomplice, an unseen trail of power was being absorbed into his body from the body of the dead boy. Likewise, nobody noticed the boosted gear gauntlet on Issei's severed arm disappear in an unseen flash of darkness particles that were absorbed into the air. The woman appeared to be very pale in skin tone. She was wearing a one-piece robe of sorts, looking very much like she had come from nobility. The robe was adorned with the same marks as present in Naruto's eyes, going down the front of her robe and at the ends of her sleeves, which were also styled with purple and gold lines edging out all throughout the robe. Her figure underneath was left very much to the imagination, although it was easy to notice she was hiding an impressive bust. Her face was unlike anything the young devils had seen. She had purplish eyes, although lighter purple than Naruto's own, yet her eyes had held no pupils to be seen. It seemed like her eyes were just one large massive sclera, yet if one looked closely, they would notice her pupils were just greatly enlarged to the point where she had little else to focus on. Her eyes also had enlarged veins protruding out from them across her temples and down her cheeks, twitching ever so slightly from time to time. She had round white spots on her face, just above eyes and centered on her face, leaving a massive circular shaped area on her forehead open. If the facial features alone wasn't enough, the horns on her head surely must have meant she was some form of demon. Of course, the horns made her look very much like the animal Naruto called her both times. Swept back, brown horns shaped similar to rabbit ears, which also looked very unnatural and yet extremely elegant, given her choice of dress. She had the most beautiful long white hair, parted around her face in two bangs that nearly went to her waist, and the hair falling behind her back went past feet while she was floating above the ground. The dark lipstick on her face contrasted extremely well against her skin. In all, this woman was an absolute beauty that couldn't deserve the name of Granny in any way. Naruto, what makes you think I'll do anything for him? We are only here because I felt the call of the dragons, which this boy seemed to have once possessed. And given your stunt with your girlfriends before we left, don't you think you might be able to do something for him? Kaguya stated, her eyes looking all throughout the area they were currently present in. Suddenly, her forehead started to form a slit between and slightly above the circles. It soon opened up revealing a third eye, almost exactly like Naruto's own eyes, barring the fact that Kaguya's eye didn't possess the cross in her pupil, and the sclera itself was red in color rather than the purple of Naruto's. As this happened, suddenly all those present in the battlefield were transported to the procession room that held the wedding party consisting of Ria's and Riser's families and their guests. Moments before, procession room, another lowly devil comes to interrupt my wedding day. Surzich's, Riser demands to know what game you are playing. Am I to marry Ria's or not? I faced your test and he failed, now this. Riser said on the view screen as all the onlookers present were surprised at the events following the Red Dragon Emperor's death. Surzich's Sama, what is going on? The Phoenix clan had no qualms about your desire to see Riser face off against the Welsh dragon, but who is this? Lord Phoenix began questioning the Mayu whose sister was to marry into his clan. He was promptly ignored however, as Surzich's Lucifer was staring at the male present on the screen, who had just entered the battleground where his sweet little sister had just lost her pawn. The man was gauging the power of the boy, who appeared to be no older than Issei was. It was one thing to come into the underworld through proper channels after all, but this boy appeared out of nowhere, wielding senjutsu and obviously more power beyond that, watching the boy form a kyuubi of pure energy around his being and launch a ball of pure compressed energy of a different natural than a devil's magic power mind you, directly at Riser, which easily knocked the boy out regardless of having the Phoenix clan powers of regeneration at his disposal. That word he said, Biju, this boy was going to be something of interest to any and all in the supernatural world, but yet a wild card all the same. Only time will tell where he might find his place in the world, and Surzich's hoped it would not be as an enemy to his faction. Zechsi Tan, who is that man now on the battlefield? Miracle Leviathan likes. Seraphol Leviathan, now is not the time. This intruder on the battlefield is a complete unknown and for some reason has made himself involved in matters that will cause problems for the Gremory house. Grafia Lucifuge said watching as the boy attacked Riser Phoenix and walked over to the dead Red Dragon Emperor. Shall I bring the boy before you my lord? Grafia said. No need, he will be here in moments. Nobody attacked the boy however, if I'm right very few of us will live through the aftermath. Surzicha said as Ria's, her peerage, Naruto, and the mystery woman with the powerful blonde suddenly appeared before them all. Ani-sama, why didn't you help Issei? Ria screamed first thing as soon as she realized where they now were. Ria's-chan, we'll speak on that soon. I must talk with this man though. Might I ask your name and purpose in coming here? Surzich's added a fair bit of killing intent at the end of his statement to Naruto, stressing his need for answers immediately. Hi there, Naruto Uzumaki is my name. Ninja is my game. I've been searching for the sister of the devil himself, and I've been searching for an angel in white. Any way you can help me find these people despite horribly vague descriptions? Naruto said, joking around and not realizing just who he was standing before. This obviously proved the wrong thing to say as negative emotions came rearing upon Naruto from many angles, most notably the extremely hot maid next to the man before himself and the guy who looked like the father of the Askeladd he just gave new sex organs to. Surzich's, this will not stand. The Phoenix household will be taking action against the Gremory for this deceit. Lord Phoenix shouted, misreading the situation as something planned by the Lucifer descended from the Gremory house. Naruto Uzumaki you say. Do you have any idea who I am or where you are? Surzicha said, rather amused at the situation now unfolding before him. The loss of Issei Haidu is regrettable, but nothing could have been done. Riser would be held accountable though, and Ria's pawns would be returned. But this boy, there was clearly something important about a human showing up out of nowhere in the underworld, using senjutsu, and forming an energy cloak over his body in the shape of a kyuubi. Maybe Yasaka of Kyoto's Yaokai faction knew something about him or at the very least what a Bijuu was. Even the slightest piece of information could be a big help in determining what he should do for a long-term plan in regards to young Naruto. Don't have a clue Big Red, but why do you ask? I need to find out about some system of miracles, so if we're done here, Naruto trailed off noticing the faces of people after he mentioned the system of miracles thing Granny Rabbit said earlier. You are without a doubt the stupidest ninja ever. Kurama said, having watched the entire talk and seeing the little bits of information Naruto had from Kaguya be told to these unknowns, drawing the situation further and further from Naruto's control. These people were obviously not on friendly terms with whomever was in control of this system of miracles, as Kaguya called it, and whether Naruto could befriend the leader of sorts, who had that same god-awful brand Uzumaki hair color, that didn't mean the red bastard would be able to keep these dogs in line. Really, furball? Because I always felt that accidental slips of the tongue made doing my job easier. Naruto said, though the lie was plain as day. Naruto knew he fucked up, but in the end it might be worth a slip. He was obviously looking for something important, as anything with the term miracle tends to be, but through the slip he found that the people he was around were not friendly with whoever had that miracle thing, and he also learned that the man in front of him was the strongest being anywhere near him. That meant he was probably high on the food chain, and making nice with him would make this entire trip so much easier. I don't know where you've come from if you are calling me Big Red Uzumaki-kun, but I can freely tell you that my name is Surzich's Lucifer, one of the 4 great Satans, leaders of the devil faction, and that you interrupted a wedding procession here in the underworld. Might I ask why you're looking for my sister though? Or why you would also be looking for an angel when devils and angels have been bitter enemies for millennia? And what purpose would a human have in looking for the system of miracles? My boy, coming here saying the things you're saying, harming the person you harmed, and still coming before me of all people, would normally be a one-way ticket to death, Surzicha said to Naruto, drawing the attention of everyone present. Naruto meanwhile winced as Surzicha mentioned various facts related to what he himself had said and done, knowing a hard fight might be ahead of him, as the devil leader in front of him managed to bring out a good amount of killing intent with each new sentence. And were his eyes glowing, maybe he should tone the jokes down when meeting new people. However, it appeared to be nothing but a ruse, as the killing intent subsided and Surzicha continued speaking, but fret not young Uzumaki, there has already been too much blood spilled this day, and I agree that children should not need to die needlessly. This was supposed to be a wedding. Hi. My name is Seraphol Leviathan, but you can call me yours or magical girl Miracle Leviathan or even Mau-sama. I'd prefer you call me yours though, you look absolutely delicious. Seraphol said, completely pushing Surzicha aside, right into Graphia, who had a twitching eye at the antics of the only other Mau in attendance. Naruto, if you must talk with these lower beings, please at the very least limit your audience, Kaguya said, knowing that Naruto was dealing with politics now and as such would need to learn that not all conversations were best held in front of everyone. Yes, your floating friend is right, young Uzumaki. Attention one and all, the Gremory family wishes to apologize for disturbance. If you would please eat our food, drink our drinks, and party at your leisure, many of us will be taking our leave to deal with the tragic death of my sister's pawn, our new arrival in Naruto Uzumaki, and of course Riser Phoenix's subsequent criminal charges at the death of an allied clan's peerage member. Surzicha announced to the wedding procession, knowing that the witnesses to this event would make any attempt in hiding any of the truth would be an effort in futility at best and an exercise in civil dissent at worst. Now then, Naruto-kun, will you and your friend join me, Lord and Lady Phoenix, Lord and Lady Gremory, Seraphol, and Riaz here to discuss recent events. Riaz, feel free to bring a Keno with you. Lord Phoenix, I feel it best that you allow Ravel to come on behalf of Riser's peerage. Graphia, would you please get a message out to Akuja right now to have him meet us at the Gremory household before joining us. His expertise will be required. Surzicha said as those he called for gathered around. Surzicha then tried to activate a magic circle to teleport the group, only to become confused at how his magic ability was impaired without his knowledge. Turning to the woman accompanying Naruto, he asked, "What are you doing?" "Pardon me, child, but you won't be able to take me anywhere. Just take Naruto and know that I will be with you momentarily. I have another matter that I must attend to that is just as urgent." Kaguya said, knowing that she wasn't earning any trust for herself or Naruto, but the simple fact was their powers were incompatible. Besides, she could sense that despicable infinity watching her from the moment she broke through the dimensional gap with Naruto, and that needed to be nipped in the bud now. Naruto looked at the woman who merely nodded her before turning back to Surzicha and said, "There isn't much use in arguing with Granny Rabbit, Surzicha. Once she gets something like this in her head she won't change her mind." As he finished saying this he suddenly moved with a flash of speed that only Surzicha, Seraphol, and Graphia caught to avoid what appeared to be a boulder falling to the ground at speeds that could have only been achieved from breaking the sound barrier above him. Naruto needed to get both Ravel Phoenix and Riaz Gremory out of the way while he was avoiding the boulder, as they would have been caught in the crater's fallout from Kaguya's assault on his person. "Damn it, Granny. I don't mind you trying to get to me for my jokes, but can you try to leave others out of it?" Naruto said as he held both the dizzy girls close to his body. "Egan boy, I will be with you shortly," Kaguya said as a portal suddenly opened next to her which she then stepped through and disappeared. "Okay then, since we're all ready, shall we go to discuss recent events before another person is killed before their time?" Sasuke stated, with an upset tone of voice and leaking killing intent at how the woman nearly killed his beloved sister. Sure, he was grateful Naruto had the skill to prevent such an event, but the woman still showed blatant disregard to him and everyone else with her action. Never mind that she was able to cancel out his power when he first attempted to take the group to his parents' estate. She was definitely the bigger wild card, and he only hoped Naruto knew what he was doing in traveling with her. The magic circle appeared underneath the group and they suddenly disappeared, unknowing at just how much the world will change, just because of the breach in the dimensional gap caused by Naruto and Kaguya's arrival. Somewhere in the dimensional gap, Kaguya Utsutsuki frowned as she looked upon this person whom she believed was supposed to be that brat who called itself Infinity. However, she knew without question this filthy devil was in no way the Ouroboros dragon she was coming to put in its place for attempting to watch over her actions. No matter, infinite or not, she would get her comeuppance with time now that she was back. What was more important was why this devil was literally bathed in the power that belonged to the dragon in question and what purpose he had in watching over Naruto, as it was clear he had no means to track herself despite his apparent desire to. In the end, he mattered little to the rabbit goddess. Her sole purpose here was watching over Naruto in his journey and dealing with two personal issues completely unrelated to him. This man, whomever he may be and whatever he may desire, was of no challenge to her and almost certainly just the thing Naruto needed for his unknown quest under her guidance. At best she might take efforts to keep tabs on his actions for the time being, but he is Naruto's problem to solve. When he learns of it, that is, because one cannot become an infinite without being all-knowing after all. Just what are you after? She thought while making note of his distinct energy pattern for future purpose. She was then gone without a trace and the man being clueless to her watching over him. Unknown location. Rizavum Lucifer was currently frustrated. Years of planning and plotting to leave this disgusting world were now at risk in ways he couldn't even have known would be a risk. The death of the Red Dragon Emperor, regrettable yes, but well within his forecasts. No, the problem he was facing were the two unknown factors that he knew came from beyond the dimensional gap. Both were easily holding power at or above the level of super devils or other god-class beings, which in itself could be worked around with proper observation and further planning. However, the boy was without question a human, and he showed absolutely no signs of holding a sacred gear. That power he cloaked himself with was chakra, he knew that much, even if he had never felt anyone who had ever had so much. The boy also was a senjutsu user from what he could tell. His eyes were also disturbing for some reason he couldn't explain. Just the first two factors were extremely frightening when combined with the fact that he obviously held ideals that would not make him join the Cow's Brigade. That much was certain at seeing the boy's reaction to the body of the Red Dragon Emperor and his subsequent attack on Riser Phoenix. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the boy said the word Bijuu. Rizavum hadn't heard that word in a very, very long time, but if he was right then all his plans were going to need to be rewritten. If that boy was a Jinchuriki as he alluded to when he said the word Bijuu, in addition to him being a senjutsu user, his sheer power alone was enough to allow him to stand tall with even the strongest of god-class beings. Yet none of that even hinted at what the woman who he was with could do. The same woman who he wasn't even aware was present until the boy made notice of. A woman that could freely open the dimensional gap. A woman who could negate Sasuke's magic power. A woman who, like him, knew the value in keeping everything hidden if her less than open dialogue and body actions messages were anything to hint at. This was completely unacceptable. Matters are made worse when it became apparent to him that he had no means to track her movements. This woman was likely on the same level as Great Red in office if his assumptions were correct. At the moment the best he could do was keep track of the boy, this Naruto Uzumaki, and hope that he could manipulate actions with the factions in order to get the world to alienate the woman and boy, both while still pushing towards his plan and releasing Trihiksa. First things first, however. He needed someone to get close to Uzumaki. The stray cat might be the best option, best even then held his doubts. However, she was one of Office's pets and would never follow his directions. The question was how he could get Office to send only Kuroka to this boy Naruto without it coming back to him. Gremory Estate. Naruto looked around the giant office in the castle he was currently sitting in while waiting for everyone to gather. This seemed like a big hassle to him personally, but he knew just how important it was that everyone was on the same page in this political mess he landed himself in. Seriously, how does he always get himself wrapped up in shit like this? Sure, he knew appearing out of nowhere was going to bring up questions. But landing in the middle of an arranged wedding procession that had some kind of duel taking place. Yeah, that was new, but it did get him a chance to talk with a big shot in this world. Maybe several big shots if the power levels he is feeling that are drawing closer is any hint. Just then the Kaguya appeared from one of her dimensional portals. She looked at him for a second before turning to the door and nodded to the group of devils entering the room. How did you enter the premises without my being aware? That is impossible. Lord Gremory said, shocked at seeing Kaguya in the office of his manor when the magic barrier didn't pick up any intrusions on the premises. I told you I would arrive momentarily. Now can we begin? Naruto has things that must be done, and despite meeting with men of your political standing in the world, your motives, whatever they may be, cannot push past the strength of will that Naruto has. I recommend that you stick to just a basic friendly meet and greet before agendas begin to seep through. Kaguya said to everyone, knowing that agendas would come forth regardless. Granny Rabbit, leave it alone. Whether they have agendas or not means dick. We both know that I need information about this world, and chances are good that they need something that can't be gained through conventional means. Whether they admit it or not. We need each other for the time being. Naruto said and promptly had an anvil dropped on his head from Log only knows where, damn it Granny. Anyway Naruto-kun, thank you for your actions in leaving Riser-kun alive to face punishment. As a civilized society, we cannot forgive the actions of a man that would kill another over something as basic as an arranged wedding not going through. However I must say I cannot approve of the condition you left him. Surziches started before looking down at a paper. I've honestly never seen an injury list like this for a single person that wasn't outright killed nor paralyzed. Granted Riser is a member of the Phoenix clan, but his regeneration factor doesn't seem to be helping in some cases. 6 fractured vertebrae, 8 fractured ribs, and 3 more ribs bruised on top of a fractured sternum that punctured a lung. Beyond that the clavicle, scapula, and humerus of his left arm all suffered compound fractures that raise the question of whether he will ever be able to use his arm again. Both of his hip bones are fractured and fragmented, a fractured left femur, and lastly, his right leg was amputated at the knee. That is just skeletal injuries mind you. I have no doubt that his muscular and psychological injuries will be if not as bad, then worse. Surziches listed off, shocking Naruto at just how much damage was done. Well regardless of how bad it is Big Red, excuse me if I say fuck the boy. I just fought in a war on my world for over 36 straight hours with no sleep, saw people I cared about die, was forced to fight someone who was not only my rival, but also one of the few people who understood the full breadth of my life's pain before seeing him too die. I was forced to take his eyes for my own in order to free my world from slavery in the form of an endless dream. Nothing in the last 2 days has been normal for me, so after all that do you expect me to come here, see a beautiful girl bawling her eyes out while holding the mutilated body of who I'm assuming was her boyfriend and not want to kill a man? Yeah, excuse me for leaving him alive to suffer, but I don't believe in killing for revenge. My master's death at the hands of my sibling disciple wasn't enough to make me want revenge, so what is maiming some self-righteous nobleman's kid to send a message to this world that I won't stand for seeing kids die young? Do I need to mention that today is supposed to be my 17th birthday? Naruto finished as his entire being began flooding the room with killing intent. The room was shocked silent at Naruto's rant. It was enough that even the 3 members of the Phoenix clan present had no means to try and argue for anything, as the killing intent was mostly directed at the elders, whereas Ravel was shocked at how the boy went through so much and still looked to be in peak physical condition. Rias and Akeno stunned that someone as old as they were had not only dealt with such things, yet still managed to be so caring for the lives of people he had never met. Kaguya simply smirked at how easily Naruto turned this room in his favor. As the silence persisted, people gradually found seats to discuss things further. Surziches continued what he was planning to say, however Naruto-kun I can't help but think it's not enough of a price to pay in respect to the loss of young Issei Haidu, and how we have no choice but to remove the memories his parents had of him to protect them. I can of course reimburse my dear sister's peerage at the cost of Riser's own, thanks to the help of Akuja Beelzebub here, but I doubt you have any knowledge on what a peerage actually is. We can explain more about that as we discuss things. Now then, Lord Phoenix, I would like to discuss the current state of my sister's peerage. Lady Phoenix started without missing a step. Before we begin Surziches, I would like it to be known that considering Riser will likely be losing his peerage and my daughter Ravel here is currently one of his bishops, I would ask of you and Lord Akuja could remove the bishop from her in favor of my final 3 pawns, which I will then trade with young Rias. That's the least we can do given what has happened, and I have already discussed this with daughter, who feels much the same. I see no problems with such an idea. Rias, any issues? Yes, Ani-sama. I do have an issue with the fact that you are taking this too fast. Ravel is no doubt a wonderful girl, and a pureblood phoenix would make a fine addition to nearly any devil's peerage, but beyond that I just don't want to deal with this right now. Please just let me have my pieces back empty so that I can choose for myself who will become my family. I'm only here out of the fact that I owe my freedom to Naruto-kun and wish to express my gratitude in his help with Riser. If you would allow me to stay regardless, I would appreciate it though, as I distinctly remember Naruto saying that he was looking for the sister of the devil, and that can only be myself or Sona-chan. Ria said, showing remarkable foresight in the selection of a peerage and also diplomatic involvement in regards to the knowledge of Naruto's request and how it affected either herself or her closest friend. Yes of course Rias, I agree. You also did well to remind me of that. Naruto, just why are you looking for the sister of the devil, and also why are you looking for an angel? What is your purpose in looking for the angel's system of miracles? I should inform you that you will never be able to lay your eyes on that as either human or an angel. Even if the three factions were to somehow bring peace to the world, the angels would never allow anyone near the biblical God's greatest creation next to humankind, Sasuke said, drawing a frown from Naruto, a raised eyebrow from Kaguya, and an icicle between the legs of Naruto from Serafal. Naruto, why would you want some crusty old angel that can't even get you up when you can have a lovely magical girl in Miracle Leviathan? I'm more than sure I can rock your world and get you anything you need. Serafal practically purred out while making it hard for him to move given how trapped his arm was in her chest. It was very plain to Naruto that this woman was going to drive him up the walls, so why not make it easy? Sasuke, you said I could call you that, right? I see you're attracted to me, and while I definitely approve, can we make a time and place for this that isn't surrounded by world leaders, parents, siblings, and others? Business first, then we can have mountains of pleasure. Naruto said this and wordlessly filled the room with 4 shadow clones, each at the side of every seemingly available woman in the room. The room was promptly filled with the blood of every female present. All the clones then performed a transformation, and every male present likewise had sudden bouts bloody noses at the sudden appearance of female Naruto clones. Naruto-kun, I thought we were having a meeting, not an attempted mass assassination. Kaguya asked, making Naruto laugh at just how easily his first original jutsu can defeat people of all ranks and social standings. Don't you worry granny, I got you covered as well. You know you can't live without me, Naruto said to suddenly find himself falling through the floor, down what looked to be a cliff easily over 5,000 meters in height. Naruto's sudden answer to escape was an attempt at toad summoning which promptly failed before he followed through with his Godo jutsu in such extreme situations, a shadow clone stepladder and Bijuu mode super speed to get himself to a safe area, noticing that Kaguya left the dimensional portal open to allow him the chance to escape. Yes sir, progress was clearly evident and that shows just how much the world works. What Azazel would give to get his hands on you, Naruto-kun Sasuke said wiping the trail of blood from his nose and noticing everyone else stirring from the fainting spell Naruto forcibly induced. Sorry, I'm not into that whole mad scientist thing. Long story, mostly involving old men and young boys with special eyes that I now have. Granny Rabbit, I'll kill you if I ever start seeing images of Orochimaru forcing Sasuke to suck his little snake dick. Old man Sage won't even be able to protect you from my wrath. Naruto trailed off, plotting as the horrid visions started to invade his mind, unaware whether or not Sasuke and Orochimaru ever had such a relationship, but given what Karen had said about how Sasuke acted when she was a member of the Sound Village, he would not be surprised if it might have happened at least once. Excuse me Naruto-kun, but can we get back on track? Akuja asked knowing that this conversation would go well into the night. Yeah, let's do that. Naruto said. Naruto, I was told by Sasuke that you said something very out of place when you fought Riser. From the video feed it goes. With the Bijuu that my father gave me screaming in my head so clearly. Are we to assume that the yellow chakra that cloaked your body is that very Bijuu and that you are in fact a Jinchuriki? Akuja asked, the scientist in himself eager to meet a Jinchuriki as the tales of the Sage of Six Paths from the time before the three-faction war were scarce, but yet made him out as the biblical god's equal in all aspects. A peace-loving sage who wielded an element of darkness so pure it not only created life, but also light. The idea was almost like a fairy tale, darkness creating life. Ridiculous. Darkness creating light. Beyond absurd, but yet those tales might actually be true if Naruto was any hint. I see no reason to deny the truth Akuja-sama. Yes I am a Jinchuriki. I won't go into details, but all you truly need to be aware of is that I have been the host to the Bijuu of the nine-tailed fox, Kurama from an hour after my birth. We were even roommates of a sort when he was sealed inside my mother while she was pregnant with me. My girlfriends back home have been known to joke about the fact that I'm the closest thing to a living god our world will ever get, considering my clan lineage descends directly from Granny Rabbit over there, who was the progenitor. Ah. Damn it Granny, what the fuck. Naruto trailed off having been hit in the head by a piece of bone. Naruto, enough. You're getting distracted and you need to mind your words. Kaguya said, seemingly letting off another batch of physically manifesting negative emotions on the entire room at her displeasure in what Naruto was discussing. The old lady there is worried about something besides the fact that you are freely giving away secrets a shinobi knows not to give. You really need to learn what to say where and when. I get the feeling that even saying things in this place privately to one of these heaven-sent devil goddesses, especially that black-haired one that is begging to ride you, would not be private in any means it is supposed to be. Kurama said, idly noting through Naruto's vision that when he said heaven-sent devil goddesses, every single female in the room grabbed their heads while wincing in pain. That would be good no. Damn it thinking like a ninja is hard. Give him a break fuzzball, but still thanks for the heads up on both points. I'll talk with Granny soon about that and deal with the other thing here and now. Naruto-kun. Well, I guess since you're so entranced by my beauty, Seraphil said right in Naruto's face before suddenly beginning to make out with Naruto in front of the entire room, grabbing his hand and bringing it up to her breast and letting out a fierce moan as Naruto unconsciously squeezed her and bit her lip. Seraphil was going through quite an emotional high brought on by the physical contact before she was suddenly assaulted by the only other female present who she knew could do such a thing to her, Graphia Lucifuge. Graphia of course knew exactly what she was doing when she wrapped her fingers around Seraphil's neck and then threw her face first into the brick and mortar that made up the wall of the room. Crude, but nonetheless effective in knocking the woman out so the meeting could continue. Maid-san, not that I'm extremely ungrateful for the save during inappropriate sexy time, but can you possibly refrain from physical injuries on people that may be connected to me? I may need to resort to minfucking and pranking to ensure your compliance and obedience. Believe me when I say that you will not win in any means of pranking. Minfucking you will lead to extreme public embarrassment and are extensive blackmail material for further public embarrassment, and judging from your power levels, you are only slightly weaker than the woman you just threw. So your chances in a mostly blind fight against myself are even further dwindled. Do yourself and Big Red over there a favor, get some sun to melt that ice cold heart. Naruto said, a smirk forming as he contemplated a perfect idea on the spot involving sawdust, rose vases, and lawn gnomes. Graphia, stand down please, this is not a formal meeting, so let Sarah-chan have her fun. Besides, I get the feeling that this may help Rias in regards to Sona, Surziches stated while getting some papers from the desk he was currently sitting at. Naruto-kun, I have an offer for you. You are right when you said we would likely be best helping each other, and given the recent loss of my sister's potential strongest servant, I would like you to watch over her while you get acquainted with the new world you find yourself in. If you accept my offer, you can also help alleviate the issue of Issei Haidu's parents having their memories of their son completely removed, as I will ask you to live in his home, not as a stand-in, but as a visiting sibling to one of Ria's peerage members who currently lives in their home. I will make Asia, Ria's servant, an adopted child by the Haidu family after the death of their son Issei at an early age. This will give you a home, but also Ria's school had an opening not long ago. What say you? Surziches stated with a grin that only someone with ulterior motives could ever pull off. Sure, sign me up. Naruto said enthusiastically. You are such an idiot. Kurama growled out, which went completely ignored by the Uzumaki. Guo Academy grounds, 1 week later. Kurama. What the fuck did I just sign up for? I stand corrected. You have, without a shadow of a doubt, the best and the worst luck in the history of the multiverse. Can't you see it? These girls, all of them would kill for a chance to rock your world. And you have the best excuse ever to get close, that devil, truly the man is a saint blessed by the great log. Naruto suddenly thought he heard Surziches screaming in agony. Something along the lines of what did I ever do to get such a migraine? Was heard, but Naruto chalked it off as the wind playing tricks on his ears. Fuzzball, I don't need more girlfriends. And I sure as fuck am not going to abuse my new position as a teacher to get laid. I don't even care if the school headmaster was a dick and just happened to mention the fact that the class I now teach is filled with kids a year younger than I am. You don't get it, do you, kid? Surziches just made you a physical education teacher. For a 17-year-old male, there is no greater dream than the girls' locker room, whether you have 3 girlfriends and a Bijuu clone daughter that wants to jump your bones back home or not. You struck gold. You are not only obligated to take advantage of such good fortune, you are required to take advantage. Kurama was shouting as Naruto was forced to cut his voice out when suddenly another Bijuu decided to pick up the slack. Naruto-kun, excuse me when I say this, but all of us agree with Kurama and you are in a rather unique position. Why not find yourself a sexy kitten to take under your wing and help her build a sweat she'll never forget? I'm not saying to go overboard and make every single female in this school your playthings, despite the fact that you are more than able to. I'm saying you have a natural presence that draws people to you, and female demons or devils will likely find such a thing to be a drug, considering they are drawn to power. You already experienced this with Seraphil when she actually raped you after that meeting last week. Although I found it funny how willingly you played it as a sub before you turned the tables, and she ended up begging to be your slave, Matatabi interjected. I'm telling you, Naruto, let me live in her. She will worship you and me both after I finish training her. Jayuki managed to get out, with many perverted giggles along the way. Enough, Jayuki. For the last time, she loved my chains, sure. I highly doubt she is into the tentacles of a 50 high Bijuu raping her. Naruto trying to make the Bijuu see reason. And thus reason prevailed for the Bijuu when he countered Naruto's argument. Naruto, she's a big-time actress in the underworld as a magical girl who fights demons or other forms of supernatural beings and acts the part in her daily life. There are not any bigger clues in the world that she is a sexual freak. Did it not strike you as odd when she asked you to use your chakra chains and shadow clones to fill every orifice on her and bathe her in your body fluids? The three of us were made to be together, Naruto, don't you dare deny it. We'll talk later, right now I'm about to have class. I can only hope Granny Rabbit is having an easier time with her job. How she got to be the school nurse, I don't want to know. Naruto said mentally before cutting off the connection as he stood in the middle of a grass field. Just as quickly he found it had started raining, directed only around himself. When his clothes started burning from the rain, he let out a laugh before looking at the sky and saying, "Acid rain, Granny. Even I gotta admit that is good pranking." The rain finished, leaving Naruto with minor burns on his skin, his clothes in tatters, and two girls coming up to him. One of the two was his current roommate and supposed sibling, Asia Argento. They got along famously despite the girl being extremely hurt at the death of her first friend, Issei. She had told him that she was falling in love with the boy, and learning of his death was probably an even worse pain to her than being exiled from the church for healing a devil's wounds with her sacred gear. Asia was walking with her friend by the name of Kiru. Naruto didn't know much about the girl, but he definitely felt something supernatural from her. She was a complete human from what his various sensing skills were able to tell, after having experienced many different species from the supernatural realm, but she held some power within herself, and Naruto could tell she was aware of it even if she showed no signs of being a part of any faction. The two girls were wearing gym clothes at the moment, consisting of white short-sleeve V-neck sweaters with the Kuo Academy emblem on the breast, black bloomers, knee-high black socks, and white low-top athletic shoes. Kiru was wearing a pair of glasses that would obviously get in the way of normal physical education activities, let alone the torture he was intending to put his class through in the attempt to bolster the skills of those supernaturally inclined students at this school. As the two girls were chatting while walking to where the class would meet, Asia suddenly looked his way and a surprised expression came on her face. She knew he would be doing something at the school starting today, but was like him unaware of what role he would play in the campus. Kiru meanwhile looked at him, and her face took on a familiar grin that one would only know could come from a pervert. Her hand suddenly moved up to her face in order to touch her glasses, but before she could finish the motion, a dodgeball suddenly smacked her in the back of the head, sending her rolling forward across the grass in a tumbling action that left her on the ground at Naruto's feet, unconscious and without glasses which were on the ground beside her broken, as two boys whom Naruto also recognized as students to be in his class, came running up whilst sweating profusely. Naruto, despite the sudden action, could not help but feel a strange sense of relief as the girl's glasses were broken and the two boys came up, as it was certainly clear the attention was off of himself for a moment. It was almost as if the girl had directed some form of intent at him, but yet it was neither hostile nor good. The girl was a pervert, yes, but how many perverts even with some supernatural help could get such a feeling out of him? This world was all sorts of fucked. Oh shit, Matuzda. Why did you throw the ball at Kiru? Do you know the kinds of things she'll make us do this time? I still haven't grown back that hair from her punishment last time, and we never even touched her before. I'm too young to die a virgin. The boy by the name of Motohama squeaked out as he looked at the body of Kiru before continuing, you know, when Kiru isn't speaking or moving, I can't help but find her extremely cute. Mitsuda. Maybe your idea has some merit after all. I told you, man, I was throwing the ball in this direction, I didn't actually expect it to hit anybody, least of all Kiru. And yes, she is lovely despite what she does to us. We should totally shoot the moon tonight, the other boy, Mitsuda said as Naruto could feel lustful intent rising off of the boys. Why did his evening tonight have so many plans already? Well, at least this is the kind of thing shadow clones are good for. Perverts filled his life in the past, and he did need a new purpose, maybe being a teacher would be good for this world after all. Go streets, later that day. I'm telling you, Arena, we should not interfere. I know he was your friend and someone you have many times professed your undying love for, but he was a devil. Worse still, he recently died in the underworld if our information is correct. You know as well as I that devils remove the memories of people related to their human servants if the worst happens, just like the fallen do. It is a despicable, deplorable action, but we have no control over such evil beings. We do need to meet with the Gremory peerage, but going to your friend's house is bad news. Zenobia Quarta told her partner Irina Shidu after listening to the same argument from the girl for so many hours while they were stuck on the plane to Japan for their current mission. It wasn't like Zenobia didn't understand where Irina was coming from in this regard. Irina was very concerned about the memories that the devils placed on her friend's parents in regards to what happened to the boy. However, it was this very reason that Irina needed to stay away. Without any proper outside surveillance on the family, they would have no way of knowing to just what extent their memories were altered to, and the mission they were currently assigned could not and would not allow such minor distractions. Church property was being stolen, and they needed to focus on that, even if there was a strong chance this mission was one way. When they were first briefed last week of the situation, Irina had gone on and on about once again seeing her childhood friend who was recently reincarnated as a devil. Then 3 days ago, just before they were originally scheduled to leave, headquarters called them back in for a briefing on new information pertaining to their current mission. Apparently the underworld had an event happen during the wedding party between one Riser Phoenix and Ria's Gremory. According to the knowledge gathered, a member of Ria's Gremory's peerage, the Red Dragon Emperor Hyuadu, was killed during a duel which was meant to challenge the right to marry the Gremory clan heiress. This in itself wasn't what worried HQ, however. The issue was that after this event not only had the Longinus level sacred gear, the boosted gear disappeared from God's system of reincarnation in a way that had never been seen before, but a human had appeared in the underworld bearing a strange energy cloak in the form of a Kyuubi and maimed Riser Phoenix. The details were still sketchy, but the devil apparently was still in a coma, with his Phoenix healing ability working too slow under normal conditions. The reason this became important was that this human apparently came back to Kyoto with a Gremory peerage and HQ ordered them to find, make contact, and determine the possible allegiance of this human. Irina of course wanted to meet the man who had fought with the person who killed her friend for separate unknown reasons, but Zenobia was both wary of the idea and also interested if there was a potential chance that he could help them in their mission as they had no other backup or reinforcements. Zenobia, what do you expect us to do in the meantime? We can't begin our mission until our contact meets with us and we have no hotel accommodations. We can't even go looking into the secondary objective since our informants didn't have much to go on at the time. Oh dear Lord, please help your faithful servants along in the right direction so that we may serve you as faithfully as possible. Irina Shidu said while walking at Zenovia's side, finishing off with a prayer in which she stopped in front of a ramen stand to perform. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the perspective, the young strawberry blonde-haired girl in pigtails unknowingly had her prayer answered when a blonde-haired man wearing a pair of black cargo shorts, an orange tank top shirt, sandals, and a black bandana with a metal plate around his right arm turned his head to look at the currently praying girl who was being overly dramatic while talking of a mission and informants. Of course, the ditzy girl was standing with her eyes closed while praying, and her partner was continuing to walk down the sidewalk. This of course made the girl an easy mark for a nearby pickpocket who had been walking down the same sidewalk trying to search for his next score. The pickpocket swiftly moved into position to take advantage of the girl who left herself exposed. The pickpocket made his move, thinking that his skill and sleight of hand action would allow him to get through the girl's cloak to grab her purse, mistaking the fact that the girl wore an oversized cloak as a means hiding it and other items of value, instead of the actual purpose in hiding her battle garb that she was taught to wear at all times when on a mission. So naturally when the pickpocket was completely dedicated in the action he was caught off guard by the girl grabbing his arm, flipping him over her shoulder, and directly into the blonde sitting at the ramen stand. The pickpocket's body promptly broke through the counter, but the man not only rescued his bowl of ramen from becoming a new fashion statement on himself with his left arm, he had also managed to stop the girl from further damaging the ramen stand as she was attempting to whip the man in punishment thanks to a weapon she pulled from her own armband as it morphed into the shape whilst she tugged it from her arm after she threw him. In her action of tossing the pickpocket and grabbing her own weapon, she had managed to remove her cloak, revealing a shapely body that entertainers and models would be envious of. The girl was wearing a skin-tight bodysuit which stopped at the thighs on her legs in a booty short style, a diamond-ish shaped opening on her lower back and left her shoulders open. She was also wearing gloves that went halfway on her upper arms, stopping roughly around the area of her biceps. Her armband weapon seemed to be situated at the top of her left glove, which easily told him the girl's dominant hand and thus enabled him a better understanding on her fighting style since she was attempting to use a whip at the moment. The girl also had black combat boots and stockings extending above the knees, yet stopping just below her mid-thigh and leaving a 3-inch gap of skin between where the bodysuit stopped and the stockings topped off. All along her bodysuit, stockings, and gloves had seemingly unnecessary belts or straps. She also proudly wore a necklace of the Christian cross on her chest, displaying her steadfast religious affiliation. All in all, it seemed as if whoever designed this girl's uniform was going out of their way to make it eye-pleasing to the opposite sex while still maintaining an excellent degree of potential combat performance. The spiky-haired blonde's action in stopping the girl and saving his meal wasn't the last of his performance though, as he had managed to maneuver his leg into dealing a punishing stomp on the chest of the pickpocket in order to knock the wind out of the man to end the fighting as abruptly as possible. The middle-aged stand owner came bursting out of the kitchen to see the mess and looked at the blonde holding a bowl of ramen whom he recognized as a customer who had eaten there for every meal of every single day for nearly the past week, a girl with her right arm raised with whip in hand being held by the blonde, and a man in the remains of his former bar top, also held in place by the blonde. Naruto, what happened here? The stand owner suddenly asked, bewilderment at the way Naruto was standing and the current state of his place of business. Well, Kazuhiro-san, I was casually eating my dinner when I heard this delightful girl's exuberant prayer, which drew my ears at how someone could make a Christian prayer sound so good in Italian, despite having the hint of a Japanese accent still present. Looking to the girl, I was struck by her beauty, as I can see the Japanese descent in her, despite having very uncommon strawberry blonde hair. As Naruto said this, Zenobia approached the stand having an annoyed yet confused look on her face at how the blonde managed to subdue Irina while she was actively wielding one of the fragments of the legendary sword Excalibur mimic. Anyway, to make a long story short, she was almost pickpocketed by this man at my feet, where she reacted in self-defense and flipped him onto your bar top unintentionally before pulling the whip in attempt to punish him, which I assume she keeps on her person as a pervert deterrent, at which point I stopped her and knocked him out. If you could please call the police in regards to the man, I will gladly deal with the girl in a manner that ensures you get reimbursed for damages and she does not get arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. If you say so, Naruto, although I would appreciate it if they do not leave without speaking to me first. Kazuhiro said, casting a skeptical look at the girl in Naruto's grip and wondering just how he would conduct business for the time being, with damage being apparent to his stand. Thankfully, Naruto's recent patronage had brought his stand a sudden influx of profit, but regardless, such an action of closing down for a few days to make repairs brought with it unneeded expenditures that cancelled it out. As he went into the kitchen again to make the phone call, he shook his head at the unfairness in the world and how hard it was to catch a break. Well, if you'll excuse me, Naruto-kun, but can you please let go of me now? I'm starting to lose blood flow in my arm from how strong your grip is and at it being held above my head. On the word of God and my profession as an exorcist, I will not leave without first settling accounts. Besides, it's not often I meet someone who can perform an action of physically disabling an exorcist, a civilian, and holding onto a bowl of ramen without spilling in a matter of seconds when a fight suddenly breaks out. Irina said, her bubbly personality brightening the atmosphere of the destroyed ramen stand. Yes, I too am interested in how you did that, Naruto-san. Such an action speaks of training and some form of combat. My name is Zenobia Quarta and you've met my partner Irina Shido. Zenobia said, a discerning look in her eyes as she looked at Naruto's body language, trying to spot any hint that could show her something as to where he was trained, what his loyalties in the world were, or even something as simple as nationality, given that his blonde hair, facial features, and style of dress made him out as someone from the Western world. Yet his mannerisms showed him as someone who was a leader of something and as such, someone that could have a personal agenda that may clash with their mission. Even she could not sense anything that might lead her to suspect him as an angel, fallen, devil, or demon, nor could she sense anything that might remotely be supernatural in origin from him. She had no choice but to follow along and play the game in order to determine his motivations in preventing the police from taking Irina. Well, allow me formally introduce myself. I am Naruto Uzumaki, the new teacher at the nearby Kuo Academy. I apologize for laying my hands on you, Irina-chan. However, no matter what this man did, he didn't deserve to be whipped like a dog without the blessed savior log to offer his salvation. As Naruto finished saying that, he received sweat drops from both girls who were raised in the Christian faith and as such never before heard of the log as a deity on the same level as the biblical god they worshipped. It was at this point Kazuhiro returned from the kitchen and sirens of police began to be heard. Well, Naruto, I don't know what is more unheard of. A pickpocket on the streets of Japan or a boy who calls a piece of a tree as a deity. You sure are a strange one. At that, the sirens from the local police finally arrived at the ramen stand, causing the next half hour of group's time to be spent filling out a police report that Naruto managed to keep out little factors that would have caused Irina minor troubles, even if a whip was a completely different type of concealed weapon from that of a gun, which is illegal for civilians to carry in most any form. Naruto also took note of the large package on Zenobia's back, which was obviously some form of two-handed blade, slightly smaller than a greatsword, yet large enough that it would normally be something that would raise questions. He had taken use of his Rinnegan to cast a small-scale genjutsu over everyone present to avoid asking questions that he wanted avoided. His actions, however, had drawn Granny Rabbit to his location, which meant that he needed to get these girls back home now for 20 questions. Hi to residents. Wait a minute, Naruto-kun. Why do you live here? Irina asked as they walked up to the doorstep of her childhood friend, surprised that it had been modified to look like an apartment complex of sorts. Zenobia on the other was concerned at the fact that she was catching the presence of at least 3 different devils inside the building. Adding on the comment that Irina just said about this house belonging to her former friend, Zenobia was getting a bad feeling. She could only hope that this was not some setup, as the powers she was feeling suggested powerful devils on top of a familiar presence. Irina-chan, all will be explained in time. Zenobia, I promise this isn't a trap, so you have no need to feel nervous. I ask that you follow my lead for the moment, as I myself am still new to this. And Granny Rabbit, you don't need to hide anymore. When Naruto finished, Kaguya suddenly made herself visible right behind Zenobia and made to smack Naruto in the back of the head hard enough to send him through the door, breaking it in the process and into the couch in the front room beyond the foyer, leaving it a pile of firewood. Zenobia meanwhile was shocked at the fact a woman was invisible behind her for who knows how long, and this woman had just sent the boy she had previously thought a full human, unaware of the supernatural world through a door and couch, but could stand less than a moment later without showing any signs of harm that one might expect from breaking furniture with their body. And did the woman have horns? At the sound of the broken door, Ria's Gremory and Asia Argento came running to the front, saw Naruto standing in a pile that was the couch before looking to the front door, and Ria suddenly got in a defensive stance at seeing the two exorcists standing in front of Kaguya. Stand down, Rias. They are not at fault, and I brought them here on purpose to discuss why they are here in Kuo. Naruto-kun, why would you bring exorcists here? You are a guest here, please don't make such decisions without consulting me first. Ria said, trying to push forth some idea that she could control him. Big mistake. Rias, before you make a complete and utter ass out of yourself, please let us do some math. First, this isn't your house either. Your brother may have done some remodeling since you were going to live here in memory of Issei, but that does not mean you are always going to be told things. Maybe the day you can hit me in training we can discuss such ideas. Second, this girl here, Irina-chan, was Issei's childhood friend. That means that she at least deserves the chance to come here and find out what happened to him, let alone discuss what she is doing returning to her hometown as a member of the church. And finally, these girls have some business with myself if what I overheard them talking about was any hint, and given what your brother and Serafal had to do in regards to my entry at your wedding tells me, I will be dealing with many meet and greets among various factions in the coming weeks. The least I can do is be civil while working on my own goals. Or do you need to run a few more laps? As Naruto finished, the girls cringed in fear, thereby securing Naruto's verbal smackdown. Never let it be denied that where logic fails, torture always wins. Naruto-kun, we can enter right. It is starting to get cold out here. Irina said, her cloak having been torn beyond repair earlier when she got in that scuffle with a pickpocket and her combat suit doing little to withstand the cold biting wind that seemed to be picking up this evening. Irina had barely finished when Kaguya pushed both exorcists inside the house and said, Naruto, it's time for your own training. Step to it and get my cake while you're at it. I am starting to get annoyed with all these little things. Damn it, Granny. I'm not some fucking slave, go make your own carrot cake. Mass sweat drop from all present in the room. Naruto-kun, how can you call such a beautiful woman a granny? Irina asked. She really does look like a rabbit, Zenobia thought before she was suddenly assaulted by a large pink monster who looked like a giant hairball. Just what I always wanted. My own pretty little kitty. I will name her Sakura, and I will hug her, and pet her, and squeeze her and give her pink hair to match my own. As the monster kept talking, Naruto couldn't help but feel sick. When it said that it would name Zenobia Sakura, Naruto felt bad. When it said it would hug and squeeze her, Naruto couldn't help but pity the girl. When it said it would give Zenobia pink hair on top of being named Sakura, the line was crossed. He rushed to the monster with speed only Kaguya could follow and proceed to use wind chakra and a kunai to literally shave the hair off the monster, leaving only a slim body frame with 2 long arms and 2 extremely short legs on a tall body that easily stood over 6.5 feet tall. The sight of the now hairless monster left many in the room concerned as to where it came from, as the shape of the monster's body made it look very much like demon straight out of the 9 circles of hell, yet the way it acted made it seem like something which was not of this world and is such an unknown. Ever since Naruto's arrival the various factions have been issuing orders to be increasingly wary of potential unknowns, as the power felt from Naruto's arrival has coincided with increased terrorist actions throughout the world without any reason, pattern, or stated allegiances. Different factions were playing host to different attacks, probing weaknesses, and directly removing key defenses whether aught was realized or not. This was a concerning factor to the world's various factions, as these terrorists were extremely capable in ability, often getting whatever goal they had in mind done with extreme casualties and property damage, yet maintaining a low level of witnesses to their actual skills to get some clue as to how to identify the terrorists, either through their powers or through their actual identities. Politics and the use of the unexplained, going hand in hand to make warmongering possible for 10,000 years. Ryo-sama, your bath is ready. A girl's voice suddenly said from around the corner as footsteps were heard coming into the front room. A young blonde-haired girl with her hair tied in almost drill-style ponytails came into the room. The girl was wearing a maid outfit of sorts, but maintained a rather holier-than-thou demeanor, showing she was new to the servant girl work she was apparently doing. Ravel Phoenix looked into the room to see the guests as well as her new king, the man who nearly killed her brother, and the woman who scared her more than anything she ever could think of. Oh, Naruto-sama, Kaguya-sama, you've returned. Is there anything you require assistance with? Ravel asked, making certain to be extremely cautious in how she spoke, lest Kaguya-sama make her fight off the pig monsters again. Or Satan help her, spending another day as a dodo bird running around another history museum exhibit. The Phoenix clan members shuddered violently at the thought, of which Kaguya took note and cast a triumphant smirk. Kaguya then directed her attention to the girl, "Why yes my little game hen, I do need something. Since my pet fox is busy trying to get wood, cue logs dropping from out of nowhere on Naruto's head and screaming of grow your own damn wood wench, you broke the door. As I was saying, I need my cake. Since you are the most fitting and capable pet to handle kitchen duty, I require my meal now. And so help me, if you dare try to put nuts in it again, I will make you fight the pig monsters while running around the museum," as a dodo Kaguya said as a miasma-like cloud formed around her entire being, causing everyone but Naruto and surprisingly Irina to be forced to their knees in a choking manner as they struggled against the pure malicious intent directed around the entire room. Before the sounds of two thumps were heard from the second floor of the building, the malicious intent disappeared, leaving the entire room barring Naruto, Irina, and Zenobia running around like headless chickens in order to avoid Kaguya lashing out at them in some twisted, yet insanely assuming from another's perspective, passion of torture that made surprisingly excellent training techniques that Naruto was always taking tips from. Asia rushed upstairs to resuscitate Issei's and now her own parents' unconscious states. Rias made her way behind Asia to her bath before Kaguya found something to make her do. Naruto had a shadow clone start focusing on Mokuton training to grow a new door, muttering all the while about stupid, it was trying to artificially learn how to create sub-elements without the proper bloodline before promptly being dispelled when a torrent of rose bushes grew up from the hardwood floor and left the original Naruto recognizing the wood release. Advent of a world of flowering trees jutsu as the source of his clone's perfectly timed demise. He didn't even sense that coming. Naruto simply replaced his clone since the jutsu only seemed to be focused on targeting him and was about to go back to talking with his exorcist guests when Kaguya did something he wasn't about to ignore. Ravel, the poor girl, was unfortunately stuck as the rabbit goddess's present torture victim. She was so shocked from Kaguya's intent that she didn't move upon the sudden release of the intent, and when the subsequent poisoning via plant life happened, she giggled in an almost adorable manner that one would typically see on only the worst of sadists. Kaguya did not take action for the amusement of others, nor did she expect such actions out of one who was in her service. She was not going to let this girl claim the high status that came when one claimed immortality. Lowly devils were beneath those on an infinite level, and there were very few who could ever hope to be infinite. True immortality is something only an infinite can have, and there were only 4 infinite power levels in the multiverse that was connected to the dimensional gap. Naruto was important for a specific reason related to this very fact. Only infinite can be creators, and there can only ever be 5 infinite at any time. But the multiverse was missing an infinite, and fractures created by the gap in power were tearing existence apart. She was sealed away for who knows how long, and in that time, one infinite had disappeared without the replacement appearing. Given that one of the 3 remaining infinite was also sealed and she knew it was Trihiksa, who could have only be beaten by him, her first true love, and yet the one she hated more than any other for rejecting the idea of love, can only be between 2 beings, the very idea of which lead to a mass birth of different types of beings all across various universes. In the end, their competition ended in something truly unintended. Not only did she give birth to her children and started a family line that spread to all others in the elemental nations, and yet only Naruto himself truly stood out as one with the potential to recreate the balance of 5. As to how this related to Ravel Phoenix, well that was twofold. The immortality issue aside, the girl bothered her. The prissy nature, the no wrong can be done thoughts that Kaguya always felt running through the girl's head, and the way the girl hid her sadistic nature so perfectly all were traits she herself had. This was not acceptable because she was not handing her own infinite title until she was the oldest infinite and long past that. The other issue was something of a test of Naruto's nature. An infinite will show traits of those they are bound to replace. Naruto, should he truly have the potential, it will show in not only his response to her next action, but he may even be able to prevent it. She knew he had it in him though, no matter how imperfect the possibility of discovering future infinite candidates was. Naruto was practically an infinite from conception after all. So as Ravel giggled ever so innocently at clone Naruto getting a taste of chemical warfare from the flower bush, she was not expecting the force of wind coming from the original Naruto appearing directly in front of her, his hand holding an outstretched arm from Kaguya, meant to hit her across the face, and then slammed his foot on the ground, which sent ripples of power surging forth, causing a convenient byproduct of the Mokuton door he was working on to grow picture perfect right next to him, before falling on the floor at their side. Never do that again, Kaguya. Never. I don't care who you are or what you are, if you ever try to harm anyone I care about, I will not relent in sealing you away for good. I will erase your very existence if needed, but these people are under my protection. Naruto stated with his Rinnegan eyes circling in a hypnotic manner. The cross-slit of his pupils when he took his Bijuu Sage mode only made it look more effective, as a very real threat was in those words he just spoke. Exactly as she suspected he would react, but far more impressive at the same time. There was something about Naruto that held back his full potential at all times. He was far more developed than he consciously knew, but yet his body was being held from using his unconscious ability at any given time. Somehow, Shura was certain it was related to his empathic ability that was the underlying focal point to his own infinite potential. She never knew how he developed, as he was the oldest infinite before Red and Ouroboros emerged at the same time when their predecessors fought to the death. Because of this, she was unable to know if this trait is something common in Naruto's development. Thus, she was left to observe and once again, admit that this boy, her own blood, was her better. Why did that simple fact cause her to feel happy though? Are you alright, Ravel-chan? Naruto asked before turning to her and looking directly into her eyes. He saw the fear going through her as she momentarily looked over to Kaguya. When she looked back she obviously regained her composure before say, yes Naruto-sama, I'm fine. I have some things that I must help Ria-sama with after her bath and I can't keep Kaguya-sama waiting too long. Please don't mind me when you have guests of your own. Yeah, I'm almost certain that Rina and Novia are enjoying the show. Can't you see how Novia looks as she has been trying to watch every move made to determine who is the biggest threat? Seriously, with each action she is moving her arm closer to grabbing her sword, but yet she looks like a deer in the headlights, as she realizes with each action she could die at least twice before she could even grip her blade. And that is just what she can see. And pretty Rina, isn't it odd how there is so much malevolence in this building, yet she is the only person other than myself unaffected. Hell, she looks like she's having more fun now than she has in years. Dragons really are awesome. I almost wish I could have talked with him more, but Drake was so dead set that she was the one and he had to go immediately. That she would become the next Red Dragon Empress because he owed it to Issei. Naruto finished causing Arina Shido to drop unconscious in his arms as she fainted. Haidu residence, 6:15 p.m. Zenobia Quarta was shocked. No, shocked was too simple to put it. When the higher-ups informed Arina and herself about the disappearance of the boosted gear from the system of miracles, she in no way expected anything to come of it on this mission. She figured that somehow, someone had managed to completely eradicate the Longinus from existence. It was admittedly a stupid thought considering various factions have been trying for millennia to destroy the 13 Longinus. The very idea of humans having the capability to kill gods was something none of the supernatural world was pleased about, and yet the 13 Longinus seemed to carry an invulnerability stronger than the plot armor Special Agent Jack Bauer has on her favorite guilty pleasure TV show, 24. Still, Irina somehow gaining the boosted gear from the alien they were tasked with finding in their secondary objectives. Even more concerning was that this Naruto Uzumaki was able to converse with the boosted gear, successfully sought out Irina without even knowing who or where she was, and then at some point managed to transfer the sacred gear to her without either of the exorcists knowing. Mind-boggling was a more appropriate feeling than shocked, and the exorcist still felt like she was being generous with how she was actually feeling in this situation. Well, if you'll excuse me Naruto-kun, but can you please let go of me now? I'm starting to lose blood flow in my arm from how strong your grip is and at it being held above my head. It also feels like it's on fire. It was then. The very moment they met when he grabbed Irina as the pickpocket was thrown by Irina. But did that mean Naruto set up the entire event? Judging by what she has seen, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. And yet she knew that there was nothing to be done. Even if she somehow convinced Irina that Naruto might be an enemy, which looked nearly impossible considering what just happened, there was no way the two girls could defeat him. His comments to the blonde devil just moments ago were so close to home that she was wondering if this was more like a bad dream than their actual mission. And that rabbit woman. Girl, if you persist in not using my name, not even your blind faith in a dead god as you call him will save you from my wrath. Kaguya said to Zenobia as the exorcist suddenly found herself being held in the air against her will, staring down at both Durandal and Excalibur Destruction, which were now stabbed in the floor in front of Naruto who was kneeling with Irina in his arms after her fainting spell. Damn it granny, give Novia-chan a break. She was almost as white as a sheet after you brought that furball to molest her, but removing her seal forcefully and threatening her over some petty thought she might have had. That's low even if you can do it and leave her unharmed. Also, I'm positive that you are pushing the limits of what I just told you. These people will not be harmed. Set her down and leave, now. Naruto trailed off, the anger in his voice evident to all present. Kaguya simply dropped Zenobia, who had passed out while being held in the air, was caught by a clone of Naruto, and disappeared from sight, leaving the Durandal and Excalibur Destruction blades exactly where they were. Ravel was in much better spirits at the disappearance of Kaguya, but she knew better than to hold any ill thoughts towards her. That woman was telepathic or something, because she knew things almost as soon as you did yourself. It was more like Ravel felt a weight off of her very being at the disappearance of Lady Kaguya, something that was unknowingly shared with the entire household barring Naruto himself. Despite this, the holy swords in the floor mere steps away were a new concern to the Phoenix. Naruto-sama, if you'll excuse me, Ria-sama is likely in need of my service. Brave please, for the last time stop with the Naruto-sama. I'm not your lord, I'm not your elder, and I'm certainly not someone who follows with proper conduct at all times. Call me Naruto, okay? Naruto asked for Log even knew how many times now. It hasn't even been a week since they had started seeing each other on a day-to-day basis. Ravel for her part was caught completely off guard by Naruto's sudden nickname. She started to feel flush as her face was turning a brighter shade of red than Ria's hair. She started sputtering nonsensical words before turning around and rushing out of the room in a hurry. Now, then let's have a look at you, Naruto said looking down at the durandal blade stabbed in the floor. Underworld capital city Lilith, Mayu Chambers, 6:15 p.m. Seraphol Leviathan, can you please explain your interactions with the alien known as Naruto Uzumaki? Graphia Lucifuge asked before her king Surzich's Lucifer, Ajuka Beelzebub and Falbium Asmodeus, who all sat at podiums in a half-circle. Seraphol had chosen to stand on the floor before her closest friends as Graphia stood directly in front of her questioning her recent actions, now that Naruto was in Kuo serving as a teacher at the academy. They, being Graphia, wanted this meeting to be held in private to address why Seraphol had been gallivanting with Alien when he was technically still a threat to the security of the underworld. Graphia had every right to be concerned with just how close the strongest female in the underworld was to the alien who invaded her sister-in-law's wedding procession. Such conduct was well beyond unbecoming of her position, and that was only what had been seen in the public over the course of the 5 days the blonde was in the underworld. Who knew what happened behind closed doors? One thing was certain though, her behavior in public was showing someone who was compromising one of the highest positions in the underworld to a potential enemy. Naruto must not see it happening. The world is changing. It was changing even before Naruto came, but his arrival made even the status quo of the world worthless. Everything is different now specifically because of what he is. A humanoid alien in the truest sense of the word appeared with powers rivaling Surzich's unsealed form at the very least, and yet, is 100% human, possibly even the next evolutionary stage of humanity. Yusaka of the Yakai faction is in an uproar at the Kyuubi we have apparently created and demands a meeting with him. The other factions have yet to say anything in regards to Naruto, but judging from our own reports about the Void and Naruto's arrival, his power was being felt across all the realms in both humans, with no supernatural connection, as well as those who are related to the supernatural world alike, means that they are likely gathering information from their own sources first. Seraphol stated in a rather serious tone. I must admit some of these things are concerning Graphia. What is your aim in this meeting? Surzich stated trying to get his wife to let Seraphol have some leeway. The look of death his wife sent back at him was enough to shut him up. And what pray tell, does that have to do with you acting like a 16-year-old girl who has a touch of love at first sight? This thing alone is a threat to our being and need I say anything about the return of the Void? Waste not a day upon return of the Void, for war dawns on illusions fall and in the twilight of disorder, awaits the reunion of the 5 Graphia alluded to, clearly not understanding what Seraphol was personally getting at. Amayu Beelzebub and Asmodeus were clearly watching in contemplation, obviously thinking on where Seraphol was going with this. The knowledge of the Harbinger Void or the Infinite of Void dated back to the original Satan, and as such there was very little to go off of, but the Void was an infinite whose power was nearly that of the biblical God himself. This knowledge of infinite was troubling, because it was through this phrase Graphia stated that they learned of them to begin with, that it was some prophecy of sorts, hinting at all 5 of the infinite coming together again, and the knowledge of infinite themselves was something only told to the leaders of devils and hidden from the general public to avoid mass panic. Further research stressed the fact that she controlled dimensional space itself and is the reason all known infinite had a presence of nothingness around them, not to be confused with the infinite nothingness, or as it later coined in honor of her, Void. This research had become Ajuka's top priority, as the research into infinite becomes something of a necessity for many other reasons as well. Acting is one way of saying it certainly, but another way is agreeing with it entirely. Graphia, it has been over 900 years since the start of the Great War which went on for over 200 years. It's been over 300 years since our own civil war that divided the underworld ended. Don't you think that living nearly 800 years of our lives, growing up and maturing as devils during history's bloodiest conflict, and then spending another 400 years of placing the needs of our own people above those of yourself, entitles one to the desire to do something completely selfish, even at the cost of losing everything? My duty as Mayu also demanded myself to be keenly aware of the world as a whole, and by acting on my very impulsive desires, I serve a far greater role to the underworld at Naruto's side than I could as a Mayu. Various factions be damned at the thought of a devil invasion of Earth, along the lines of what happened in 1095 AD, when the Great War erupted. Seraphol started in her rebuttal, handling Graphia's annoyed countenance with an almost practiced ease. At this very moment, Azazel is in Kyoto preparing to meet with Yasaka on my own request. Barakiel is trying to track down Kakabiel who has disappeared somewhere on Earth, and Shemhazai is trying to feed me spoonfuls of bullshit that the Grigori are not dealing with a coup d'etat. Meanwhile, I have other reports of angels missing at least 2 of their 6 known Excalibur blades, and the church recently put mission plans involving my dear Sona's territory, unconfirmed reports from Mount Olympus about an incursion into Tartarus, and given Hades has absolutely refused to speak with me about this further provides concern, given Tartarus's location in the underworld. Confirmed reports of 2 immortals thwarting various supernatural terrorist actions in North America, and finally unconfirmed reports popping up about a human in Japan without a sacred gear who can negate all forms of magic. Seraphol said passionately as it became clear to all about her true intentions. Excuse me, but why does everything major always happen in Japan? Now I mean really, the human world is a vast place, but anything of seemingly major supernatural importance pops up in their world, and bam, it's Japan. Why can't very bad things that happen on Earth pop up happen in say England, Israel, or China for a change? Experiments require variables put into an equation to know what will work. Japan, nothing ever changes. I am just thinking aloud, please continue Seraphol. Ajuka said randomly, drawing confused looks from those around him because he wasn't a person typically known to speak out of turn. Seraphol looked over to her friend, shook her head at the idea of things like that being almost too coincidental, before continuing. I'm sorry, but I want to be in on the action again, not in the underworld working behind some desk. Naruto came here from beyond the dimensional gap fresh after fighting a war in his own home at his own admission. And we gladly took what knowledge about him we could from a man who hadn't slept in days while fighting at levels that might push us hard, given we saw one such battle at the very moment of his arrival. Hell, who would freely fight at their upper limits when they were just dropped into such a scenario, unless they might be looking for someone in charge and a chance to rest, knowing that by releasing power in such levels, he wouldn't be risking too much in his immediate future on something of a gut call. We don't know what kind of person he really may be, but I feel like he can be trusted. And the only way we can get that is by interaction with him. I look his way and I see myself. Someone who trusts nearly instinctively, but has a fierce bite when needed. Fiatan sees him as someone who likely will bring chaos and by proxy war, but has no plan to deal with the backlash of any fallout an alien might have. My wandering eyes which have finally found a man who interests me in both a physical and powerful scale, wishes to see what his day-to-day personality might bring. The Mayu in me needs to ensure that such a war which can bring together 5 beings that are all capable of ending existence, never comes to pass. As such I, Seraphol Styri, humbly request to go to the human world to live alongside Naruto Uzumaki, a figure who will be a household name for one reason or another. My duty as a devil demands I make this sacrifice. I've been involved in the leadership of our society for so much of my life that I can recognize just how important Naruto is without any potential romantic feelings involved. Those romantic feelings however also bring myself a new plaything though, as I've never had the pleasure of actually enjoying my work. Seraphol stretched the emphasis on the idea that she was doing this out of some requirement, enjoying just how much it seemed to piss off Graphia that she wasn't resigning from her position as Mayu for the betterment of the underworld alone, rather than some random alien booty call. Of course someone might think it, and while she did want to get Naruto back in bed again soon, even she could agree that their introduction and subsequent night together in the home of Lord Gremory in his exhausted state happened way too fast for normal circumstances in starting a strong, trusting relationship. For all she knew, he probably had a baker's dozen list long of women filling a harem, and harems make actually getting to know someone hard. Starting off life anew with a random fuck right after ending a war was nothing new to her or anyone else in this room, and it seemed that such a tradition was in fact a multiversal routine. Yes, she may have initiated their relationship in a verbal and physical way, but he took her very non-consensual actions at the start and freely went with it. The aspiring magical girl knew because when she woke up after Surzich's meeting with Naruto was being shown to his room by a servant. When he dismissed the servant and called her out on following him to his room, she jumped his bones in a sex-crazed frenzy the likes of which she first felt at power of the original Satan Leviathan. The way the moisture in the air would dance around her body as she felt the aura of specific people would sometimes drive her to ecstasy, much like a demon would feel when they hit the peak of their heat. Seraphol had only ever felt this feeling around a few people, one being Graphia, whom would never let go of the fact that Surzich's was in love with Seraphol before bringing Graphia to share their bed. Yes, Grafia may have lost their battle to be a Mau, so she took the concession of being Surzich's one true love instead. And the Queen of Lucifer still felt the need to be a bitch to her at times, despite having everything one might want. Despite this, Seraphil was so in tune with the moisture in the atmosphere that she could feel the very aura of all people, be they demon, devil, angel or anything in between, often revealing their intentions, movements, and very rarely these auras would enact some form of sexual longing out of her that has on a few occasions lead to complete inability to control both her powers and actions, which was how Seraphil had with Grafia when they met. While training far and wide to at least always have subconscious control over her ice magic, sexual desire isn't always the easiest to control. Especially when feeling a type of power the likes of which she has never before encountered and easily eclipsed her own when not even at 100% of his full ability. The encounter, almost assuredly something that could have ended with her death in the hands of an enemy, was something that not only scared but also comforted Seraphil. Who wouldn't be scared at waking up naked in the arms of some random man you didn't even remember meeting, in the household of one of your closest friends, parents with the bed beneath you broken and literally covered in so much bodily fluid that one might ask how many people you were with. That would be demeaning in most normal cases, and for this to be the first time she has completely lost control of herself in over 500 years, she needed to ensure that such a thing could never happen again. Naruto's power was the most extreme on all spectrums she had ever encountered, and as such, being near him meant she would always be training that self-control she had thought she would never need to worry about again. Seraphil, might I ask something? Falbium Asmodeus said in a serious voice, a far cry from his rather lazy personality. Yes, Asmodeus-sama. As long as I've known you, you proudly use your title of Mau. However, you have not once referred to yourself today with your title as Mau Leviathan. Furthermore, your actions here have made it clear that you are giving away your title. Would you tell us when you plan to abdicate your title of Mau? Falbium asked, knowing somehow that this situation would be bothersome beyond degree. It was unheard of for a Mau to throw away their title with no replacement and no warning. Seraphil, however, was not someone who went by normal ideas of reason, and Falbium had a bad feeling about her answer. Didn't you get the memo? Fiatan accepted the role of Mau Leviathan as of 12:01 am this morning. I made certain that the paperwork was in your offices yesterday at 12 noon, with proper signatures from Diehauser Belial and Bartholomew Gremory of the Underworld Parliament, supporting transfer of the title Mau Leviathan to Grafia Lucifuge. Seraphil said, not bothering to hide her amusement at the reactions as evidenced by the small grin on the corner of her mouth. Out of nowhere flashes began to pop up as the former Mau took pictures of the faces of her friends. Surzich's was obviously in shock. The underworld knew of Grafia's position as his queen, his wife, and the mother of his son. Working with the parliament would be nigh unbearable when people could claim any actions might favor him or his in any way. Yes, they could make it work, but it would require considerable effort and almost certainly potential sacrifices. He bet Seraphil went to his father knowing that his mother would happily watch over Milica's and as such encourage he go along with Seraphil's plan. Ajuka was sitting with a smirk on his face while wondering just how Seraphil managed to outwit Grafia of all people to sign off on becoming Mau Leviathan. Still he had to admit the twintail, who constantly played herself off as a magical girl, was using smart reasoning in her actions, at least in regards to leaving her title. But her mention of failing to make Naruto her queen was a concern. The four Mau and Grafia each got prototype sets of his evil pieces, with each individual piece being stronger than that of even multiple mutated evil pieces. That he could have such strength within was clearly a concern if poised against them. Seraphil's request to go to Earth, even if she wasn't in pursuit of a relationship, was something that needed to happen, if only to ensure that Naruto doesn't inadvertently start another great war, as a dimensional hopping alien with no knowledge of the locals might unknowingly do. Falbium knew he shouldn't have asked. He knew it, but he couldn't help needing to know. If life was bothersome as a Mau before, giving Grafia equal power in Seraphil's place spelled nothing but trouble for the two Mau that weren't her husband. His tears were that of a boy who lost his favorite toy and was denied a replacement. Also to his shock and more fitting to the situation around him, the momentarily comical tears at the potential problems of Grafia's appointment as Mau began turning into icicles due to said woman's growing anger, causing her to manifest her magic. Life couldn't be more bothersome, why couldn't he have taken a nap this evening? Speaking of the silver-haired queen of annihilation, she was furious as Seraphil's confession made her connect the dots to her previous actions. Seraphil played her 2 days ago knowing that if asked, she would turn down the role of Mau at this point in her life. The signature that she was supposedly signing as a witness in regards to Naruto's leaving the underworld to Kyoto through official channels despite entering illegally. She was present merely to escort Lady Ria's and her peerage in her husband's and his parents' absence. Seraphil asked her to sign 2 documents asserting Naruto would cause no harm and his passage was within accordance of the laws put down by the parliament and enforced by the Mau. That seemed like no harm could be done at the time, but looking back, the way the wanted magical girl pushed her to sign the papers without looking over them first should have been a clue to the attempt of putting one over her. Now she's paying the price in hindsight. She was now the new Mayu with the title of Leviathan. While she originally sought the title 400 years ago during the Civil War but failed and became a wife and mother instead, she was content at gaining Sasuke's love for her alone, rather than sharing his feelings with both Serafal and herself, knowing that she could never truly share a man with another. That fact was also why she made Sasuke pass down the law regarding Mayu having relationships with more than one partner. Yet for that life to be rudely shattered as Serafal played her like a fiddle, and she is left dumped with the responsibility of millions, just so that the now former Mayu can live a new life she wanted with the blonde enigma, was simply asking for a death sentence from any devil who lived in or grew up during the old Mayu era. And understandably, it would make someone like Grafia Lucifuge, a former member of the old Mayu faction in the beginning of Civil War, pissed to no end. The random and thoughtless loss of control over her own magic was just a hint at how caught off guard Grafia was to Serafal's announcement of her new political status. "Serafal, how dare you? You will not get away with this." Grafia roared with uncharacteristic rage and fury, contorting her beautiful features, before launching spears of ice made from her magic which plunged deep into the floor behind the now former Mayu. Serafal merely stuck out her tongue, closed her eye while bringing her hand up in a sideways Viela, her classic miracle Leviathan pose, flashed as a magic transformation, turned her clothing from that of modest successful businesswoman to magical girl Milky Spiral 7, and then shouted, "And thus Satan Rangers, your beloved Satan Pink abandons her power in favor of another. The power long sought, that of companionship. Companionship shall push me to greater heights, hopefully leading to acceptance by one thought lost, in addition to the just found. This power many would confuse from that weak ideal of the power of friendship is just the tip of the glorified iceberg, no doubt, as companionship will lead me to love. I bid you my friends and frenemy, a fond adieu." But Serafal's final shout as she said her farewell, a magic transportation circle appeared causing an almost flashbang effect of disorientating light and sound, and yet it was promptly ignored in the midst of a soon-to-happen rampage. Grafia Leviathan, as she will now be known, froze a third of the underworld capital city of Lilith. And thus renewed the fear of the now fitting title silver-haired Mayu of Annihilation. Yikes, wait, calm down Fia-chan. Thy so-called bothersome lie Falbium Asmodeus, snort out through the worst attack the underworld dealt with in 300 plus years. The Kuja laughed wholeheartedly. The irony of Falbium being Mayu charged with leading military affairs sleeping on the job during an unexpected attack will undoubtedly be the death of him when Grafia recovers from her temporary lull insanity. At least Grafia gave him space in normal matters since he mostly kept up with his job. Outside Karak Bar, Kuo City, 6:30 p.m. There they are. I wonder what those pervs are up to with Kiru-chan. One of Naruto's clones said to absolutely nobody. He then proceeded to transform into his sexy jutsu form, albeit with clothing, in attempt to avoid the distinctly bad feeling he sensed from Kiru earlier before his class started, which was conveniently avoided due to her being forced to go to Granny Rabbit's office. Why she got to be nurse made absolutely no sense to the blonde, but for some reason the idea of the scary rabbit goddess as a school nurse worked on such a great level for the inner pervert of the man that was the sole living student of Jiraiya. Naruto was on the ball enough to avoid the sudden slicing winds that randomly gusted in her direction. What she wasn't expecting was the following Japanese giant hornet hive falling on her from a nearby tree, releasing a swarm of angry, large, and venomous insects attacking the clone. As she poofed into non-existence, she left 2 specific orders for the boss and replacement. First, Japanese giant hornets are evil bastards more spiteful than even the combined hatred of 80 years of slavery did to all 9 Bijuu, and as such she wished for boss Naruto to exterminate the species with extreme prejudice, all the while knowing it would be disregarded completely. The clone's second order was for his replacement to just forget the idea of using a transformation in favor of dealing with the 3 perverts as a male to avoid impending side jokes that she knew were coming. Moments later, a new clone appeared, again donning the sexy jutsu form on the boss's explicit order. This new clone knew why the boss was so hard up on using a female in this plan, as Kiru showed clear signs of being interested in both male and female relationships, according to what he had learned from Rias, and with the end goal being to discover what Kiryu's connection to the supernatural world was while keeping the perverts in the dark. Having a female form in this meeting would remove the pervs in mere minutes through sexual appeal alone. But the clone shivered unconsciously at being forced to do this, even if she could do it without being touched, breaking cover, or doing anything even remotely involving flirting. Ah well, once more into the breach. Inside Karak Bar, Naruko Namikaze, as the clone was henceforth known for this mission, stood somewhat outside the door of the room Kiru, Mitsuda, and Motohama had apparently rented for the time being. Knowing the targets well wasn't something she had the advantage of beyond the base perversion they all shared. As such, the clone opted to listen into things happening in the room before revealing herself. She was not pleased with the boss's ideal dress for the task at hand, but she had to admit it was a cage killer if anything, and that was perfect for perverts. Maybe the boss had this outfit in mind for someone. The boss had decided to dress appealing to the eyes, opting for a revealing outfit, but still managed a bare amount of modesty. The clone chose to wear an orange miniskirt with buttons on the front, going down the length of the skirt on both of her legs, that stopped just an inch shy of being completely exposed. She also wore a brighter colored orange cloth sash that was tied and left hanging slightly longer than her skirt itself. In addition to this, she wore a brown leather belt with large pouches on top and a hook notch on the back, which she let hang leaning towards her right side. She wore an open-back blue halter top that had orange stripes at the sides and along the front, which had buttons tied together with white ties, leading to an orange suit collar holding a black ribbon. Conveniently, the top left much of her ample bosom in view from the sides, something that was certain to catch the boy's view off first glance. Accenting this was her left arm in a black sleeve with a small inch-wide orange band at the top that went from just below her shoulder and stopped on her palm, leaving her fingers unfettered. Her right arm was bare, save for a puffy orange hairband. She finished the outfit with brown leather boots that extended over her knees and stopped just inches short of her skirt. Her hair was tied in a long side tail, going from the top of her head tied with a blue ribbon reaching down to her waist and loose bangs on either side of her face reaching below her shoulders. As she continued listening, she noticed a small crack in the door that she proceeded to look through. She was certain that her chakra was completely concealed on the off chance Kiru was one of few in the world who might be sensitive to such power. The boss also decided against using the Rin Sharingan she had because the boss hasn't learned of a means to use it that didn't involve something blowing the fuck up. Stupid intel missions, they were Ino-chan's specialty, not his. Please Kiryu-sama, don't punish me too badly. I didn't mean to hurt your beautiful face. Mitsuda said to his female friend, if only through perversion. Mitsuda was a bald boy, showing grayish-colored hair from where he shaved it. The boy was wearing a male version of the Kuo Academy uniform, sans jacket in favor of a short-sleeved shirt that held up well in the warm evening outside. The boy had a camera on the nearby table that also held drinks and some food. The perverted baldy, as the boss learned today in school, was an amateur photographer in the photo club. Although one could probably wager it was something he picked up for use in his habitual peeping, but if he could push it towards other more reputable pursuits. Mitsuda-chan, you guys asked for what's coming to you. Peeping on little girls like little Kaneko-chan is all fine, taking pictures of Murayama-chan and Katis-chan in the compromising situations I get them in is fantastic for everyone involved, and that little secret that you and Motohama-chan have when you watch your hentai. Totally fabulous. But assaulting your mistress in public. Somebody needs a spanking, Kiryu Yaka said in a teasing voice, all the while looking towards the open crack in the doorway where Naruko was watching. Naruko of course didn't know how Kiru was aware of her, as she had taken all means she had known to prevent discovery. Looking at Kiru, she took note that the girl was not wearing her glasses, likely because she still needed a replacement set. The girl was also still wearing her Kuo Academy uniform, hinting that she left the school with the two pervs and hasn't been home since. Suddenly Motohama, who was not in Naruko's eyesight, started singing a song. The music playing in the background, while appealing to listen to, was unfamiliar to her. The random dialogue before Motohama started singing only made things more confusing to the female clone. Well now. We call this the act of mating. But there are several other very important differences between human beings and animals that you should know about. I'd appreciate your input. Sweat baby, sex is a Texas drought. Me and you do the kind of stuff that only Prince would sing about. So put your hands down my pants and I'll bet you'll feel nuts. Yes, I'm Siskel, yes, I'm Ebert, and you're getting 2 thumbs up. You've had enough of 2-hand touch, you want a trough, you're out of bounds. I want you smothered, want you covered like my Waffle House hash browns. I'm quicker than FedEx, never reach an apex, just like Coca-Cola stock. You are inclined to make me rise an hour early just like daylight savings time. Motohama was singing and dancing all the while in a disgustingly ugly monkey suit. As if the song wasn't obviously the male pervert's anthem from the way Mitsuda was following along as if he'd sung the song countless times before, the way Kiryu was reacting to the boys in what was an obvious mocking manner showed that this was something of a custom. Kiryu's almost taunting stare at Naruko all the while didn't assist either, confusing the hell out of the girl. The reason why Naruko knew Kiryu wasn't being a full-blown cunt in her mocking of the male perverts was in her actions was simple. If the girl was actually mocking the perverts, she wouldn't have done so in a manner that encouraged the boys to make themselves look like asses in a way that allowed all 3 perverts to enjoy themselves. Also, Mitsuda trying and succeeding in copping a feel on Kiryu would not happen if the girl wasn't in control. This was shown as Kiryu suddenly licked her lips in joy at the touch, while continuing to stare at Naruko through the cracked door. Knowing that her cover was blown right from the start, Naruko decided the time to listen and watch was over. Mentally preparing herself for grievous allusions to sexual assault from perverts of both sexes, knowing that she was a clone of a male pervert and as such holds a certain understanding of what goes on through the brains of male pervert. Naruko shuddered violently at both the known and the infinitely more disturbing unknown terrors of a bisexual female pervert. Just as she pushed the door open to enter the small room, both Mitsuda and Motohama fell to the ground, unconscious from no discernible reason. If Naruko were any lesser shinobi, such a tactic might have been a problem if things went south. However, Naruko Namikaze was a clone of the miracle worker, Naruto Uzumaki. Hostages. That shit is child's play. Besides, it was highly unlikely Kiru wanted harm done to the perverts. No, it was more like Kiru was laying out an open invitation for a private chat. Even still, Motohama was going to have at least a headache when he wakes up. Really, the chances of falling forward off a meter-high raised platform, smashing your head into a table, and knocking over one of the floor-standing speakers so that it lands on top of you? Fuck. That. Noise. I was wondering when you might come in. I have to say, you make a very pretty girl, Naruto-sensei. When I felt your power at the school this morning I was very intrigued. I can honestly say that your magic is unlike any others I have sensed. It comes close to little Kaneko-chan, but yet very different. I know she is a half Nekashu devil hybrid though, and you from what I can tell are human. But to arrive in this territory at the same time as the Harbinger Void is back in the world. That nurse is frightening, if only because I wouldn't even know she was there if she didn't want me to know, and then when she practically read my mind telling me you were off limits, well, I didn't know what to think. But at least it allowed me to learn that you and she were connected in some way, leading to my hypothesis that your power is just an incomplete form of her own. Power like yours, left leaking out to the world like that, it ends up affecting the world. And that brings in the prying eyes of men spying on others. I know of that hard way, Kiru said, a far-off look in her eyes for a moment before once again sending a piercing gaze through the clone she thought was her teacher. Wait, you can sense me? I know for a fact that I'm hiding every ounce of power. Tell me how that is possible. And I'm not Naruto. The blonde clone said, cringing at the idea that the chakra the boss worked so at learning to control, going so far as to gain the perfect chakra control necessary to become a true sage and be able to allow his chakra interconnect and conjoin with anybody anywhere who had even the barest form of chakra, thus being able to fulfill the very purpose of ninshu, was not in complete control. What the fuck was wrong with this world? So then, who might you really be and whatever happened to my Issei-chan? Your arrival coincides with the loss of everyone's memories of him, save those of all the members in the 2 peerage present at the school, who are in on the secret because that top-heavy crimson bat reincarnated him into a filthy devil. Oh, the plans I had for him. The dragon that boy held was my safety net. He was going to be the crown jewel of my harem before that dirty crow killed him. Kiru continued before Naruko even had a chance to move on, obviously glossing over her question on how she was leaking her power. But Kiru was dangerous on some level. It was one thing to be aware of the supernatural world. But she could notice the difference between different forms of power if her comparison of the boss's and Kaneko's chakra was any hint. The boss himself could barely tell the difference until he was in sage mode, and when he did learn just how their chakra was different, he couldn't help but be confused. Knowledge on the chakra system was Hinata's forte. How was he supposed to understand how her chakra worked if she didn't have a chakra network in her lithe frame? Granny Rabbit said she would try to help him understand in time, but the more things he saw, the more he needed to learn about. Learning was not what he wanted to do. He just wanted to kick ass and take names. And if the right opportunity presented itself, maybe take on a disciple of sorts. Still though, what Kiru said about his power leaking into the world and affecting it, Naruto Sensei Kiru asked in a teasing tone, getting into Naruko's blind spot. She suddenly started giving the clone a back rub, taking the effort to go slow as she dug her fingers into the muscles in an obvious effort to alleviate back pain most well-endowed females deal with. She was surprised at the body structure of Naruko, as she was certain magic could not allow such a perfect change in form without giving off some magical signal. Kiru took it a step farther when she suddenly took the initiative to grab the of who she thought was her teacher, hoping to release the transformation to fully take in her sensei in the way she wasn't able to at school. Surprised slightly at the girl's ability in getting behind her moments ago and how fluidly it was performed, Naruko did not take the sudden groping well at all. Kiru was grabbed by her left arm, which was hanging over the clone's shoulder as the normally glasses-clad girl squeezed her right breast. Naruko, in grabbing girl's arm, unconsciously moaned into the tightly held grip of the boss's student. Despite this, the clone took no small pleasure in rolling forward towards the speaker that lay on top of Motohama, holding on to Kiryu's arm the entire time the student was underneath the clone's body, building momentum as Kiryu started to get airborne when the clone was about to follow through with a poorly formed throw that sent the brunette girl straight into the opposing wall of the roughly 8x10x10 room. The clone used a bit of chakra to stop just shy of the edge of the table, and more importantly, the speaker laying on the floor that would have dispelled her had she kept moving, before looking over to the wall that Kiru should have impacted. What did she do to the boss to get this assignment? Wow. I haven't been forced to call on my own magic in a long time. You're really good, sensei. Kiru said as she literally hovered in the air. Okay Kiru, you obviously have got a lot of knowledge and a lot of secrets. I honestly only care about a few things, and none of those involve fighting you. Now, can I ask some questions or do we need to play more games? Because I'll tell you now. I am not Naruto and playing games will end badly for us both. And with that, my name is Naruko Namikaze. The clone said, obviously hoping to have a cover identity among the students for the future. Really? Your power is practically the same as my sensei that I mistook you for him. He is the only straight human I have ever felt that form of chakra from, and chakra in general is typically seen only in demons and half-breed demons. The nurse leaves a void around her as is consistent with all knowledge of infinite, but she possibly has that same form of chakra as my teacher has hidden away, so the question persists with you having this unique chakra that maybe only two people have, both of whom first appeared today, mind you. So again I ask, just how are you related to Naruto Uzumaki, and what is his play in hanging around with all those bats? Kiru asked, hoping to draw more information out of the clone. Naruko didn't see much harm in offering up a confirmation in order to explain the same power signatures between herself and the boss, despite knowing it was a weak excuse that wouldn't hold for too long. Still she needed to turn this back around in order to determine who Kiru represented. Naruto Naisama is my cousin. He asked me to look in on you in particular, as he could immediately tell you were aware of the supernatural when you were heading to his class today. He wanted to know what your allegiance was, assuming you will let it be known, since it is clear neither Rias nor Sona know of you. I will say though, that while Naruto Naisama is neutral with the devils, he would keep your existence from them regardless on what you say unless absolutely necessary. Call it a sign of trust, as people rarely hide things unless they are running from something, and I think everyone needs somebody to watch their backs. Naruko said, probably overstepping a line or two, but if it got the job done the boss likely wouldn't mind. Really now? Okay, how about this, I'll tell you one thing about myself, and we'll wait things out for now. I'd like to get to know you more though, Naru-chan. Would you meet me here tomorrow with Naruto-sensei so we can talk more? I want to see just how much trust Naruto-sensei offers, and one day is more than enough for things to happen when a magician is involved, Kiru said, lifting her eyebrow at the answer, and then leaving Naruko in the room with two male perverts who laid unconscious. Naruko was about to dispel before remembering the boss said under no circumstances was she to dispel until she herself physically reported to him, hoping she got enough for the boss to work with, and offered a quick prayer to the holy log that she wouldn't be the clone required for the next meeting with Kiru Yaka. She never even got an answer about how she was leaking her chakra. That meant another question to get in debt with Granny Rabbit about, and that list was already fucking long. What was with the girls in this damned world? And this thrice damned walk home was going to be demeaning, she just knew it. In Kakuji Temple, Kyoto, 7:15 p.m. And what, pray tell, does the Governor General of the Grigori need from the Yakai that he would personally request a private meeting with myself? Yusaka asked Azazel, knowing that this went against standard routines for official meetings. Somehow she got the feeling this was related to that Kyuubi that appeared in the underworld last week. Yusaka was a tall, beautiful and voluptuous woman who looked to be no older than in her mid-20s. But having 9 fluffy golden fox tails with white tips waving behind her and a set of golden fox ears on her head of golden blonde hair completely changes any idea of potential age one might have. The leader of the Yakai faction was in a shrine maiden outfit and was looking slightly aggravated at fallen angel before her. Azazel picked up on the irritation and thought how to best present his case. Seraphil just had to ask him to do this, didn't she? Really, why couldn't he have at least met the alien before he met Yusaka? It could have made things much easier and given him a chance to learn firsthand about the power that stretched across the world last week. Well, what could it hurt to just lay the offer right out on the table? Yusaka Haim, I come on behalf of a personal request from Seraphil Leviathan. I understand the Yakai faction holds quite a bit of malcontent towards the devils over the alien, Naruto Uzumaki and his apparent Kyuubi. Mayu Leviathan would like to arrange a meeting in the next week or two where she and Uzumaki could meet you personally, since you are the most aggrieved party in this situation, yet you are unable to leave Kyoto due to the requirement of needing to manage the Earth's ley lines. I was asked only to be a mediator in this case, hence my personal visit. Azazel said, obviously pleased with the idea of various factions getting together to discuss grievances. However, with the way things were turning out under his own faction's leadership, the chances of bringing together a true peace summit were nearly non-existent. Intriguing. I didn't think Seraphil had it in her to request such a meeting, knowing that in all likelihood she would possibly be a target. We have already uncovered that the alien is not a manufactured Kyuubi, and this has calmed the aggression greatly. However, you of all people know the power that was felt when he released it was that of godlike in origin, having once been a servant of God. Inchuriki or not, this Naruto represents a potential infinite. You know that if true, he has already changed the world with his arrival, and at all costs he must never come to meet the likes of Great Red or Office. And what do you know of his companion? Every source I tap just drops the subject as soon as it is brought up. Asaka said, her voice holding hints of intrigue and worry in regards to the visitors from beyond the dimensional gap. You wish to know of me, Kyuubi? All you must do is ask and I shall come. You of all people have earned the right, holding back this portion of his power which is well beyond any mortal control for so long. A woman's disembodied voice stated before suddenly a distortion in the room appeared and Kaguya made her presence known. Azazel couldn't believe it. It was impossible, this woman here. No, God himself banished her from the realm. Even if she did have the power, she shouldn't be here. The Harbinger Void stated her goals had gone beyond this realm after she lost to the Almighty. Was it because God died? Whatever the case, Azazel knew he had to talk with Michael immediately after this meeting. Asaka meanwhile bent to a knee, also familiar with the presence before her. The Kyuubi leader of the Yaka faction was unaware of Azazel's past knowledge about the woman before her, however anyone with recorded knowledge from the time before the Great War would know just what a void meant to the world. The presence of a void naturally meant the presence of an infinite, and every text she had ever read stressed the fact that the infinite were to be revered beyond that of race and creed. Upsetting an infinite had the potential to lead one to ruin because they held the very fabric of reality at their fingertips. However, the infinite were very reclusive in nature, only making themselves known at times of great upheaval or shifts in nature. The idea that the true void would come before Yasaka personally had never even crossed her mind. Why so quiet all of a sudden, boy? Is the mere thought of seeing me again after several millennia that distressing? Is it because my beloved no longer lives to stay my hand at those who need to be disembodied or have their existence nullified? Kaguya told Azazel, who knew with every word she said further drove home just how bad things could become if she was roaming the world unchecked. Nothing of the sort, Kaguya-sama. I was just so honestly shocked at your presence. How have you kept hidden? Please tell me you haven't found Office yet. The world couldn't handle such a clash anymore, Azazel said, hoping with every fiber of his being that the Harbinger never again came before Ouroboros. If a clash between Great Red and Trihixa was something that would lead to the apocalypse, then one between Kaguya and Office was something that would bypass the destruction and just erase existence altogether. Nothingness and void were a recipe for disaster. My interests with the snake are done. If she wants to bring up the past, then she shall suffer. My goal is more far-sighted and is mainly hands-off now besides a few exceptions, so let it be known that I will only interfere if my key interest is threatened in a way that needs defending. And he most certainly will not, barring certain people who know better. Kaguya told Azazel before she looked back towards Yasaka. As Kaguya regarded the Kyuubi before her, she took careful note of her own power levels, regarding the distinct difference between the chakra of this world and its most powerful chakra user, in comparison to that of her own and Naruto's, the holy energy she has gained from managing his Lee lines. And finally Kaguya compared Yasaka to the younger of the two other Kyuubi in the city, whom was no doubt kin of the woman before her. Your name? Kaguya asked, something that did not go unnoticed by Azazel. Everything the fallen angel governor knew of the Harbinger Void hinted that she would already know trivial information such as that after spending mere moments in the presence of another. What was she after that she would be cordial to another? Asaka meanwhile was slightly confused at the differing tones of respect in Kaguya's voice between her speaking to Azazel and herself, but she was still not going to demean one on a different level than herself by speaking out of turn. Hundreds of years leading her people had given her ample experience in knowing when to push and when to pull. Yasaka Wakahisa, Milady. Asaka told Kaguya, whose expression was clearly unreadable even to her, an expert in facial tells. Forever ancient 8 fists. How interesting, Lady Asaka. What would you give to have the freedom to leave Kyoto at any time without worry of the Lee lines becoming unstable? The ability to find a beloved and return the Kyuubi to a population that numbers more than 3. I need you, your daughter, and the Lee lines free of Kyuubi control, which I must say you have done an amazing job in containing a portion of the system of miracles, even though you were unaware of their greater purpose. Kaguya stated, drawing looks of shock from both Azazel and Yasaka. Azazel was shocked because the world's Lee lines were for the most part hidden beneath the crust of the earth besides 3 places, Kyoto being the second largest source behind that in the Vatican. However, learning that the Lee lines were tied to the Almighty's greatest, nearly self-sustaining creation was something that tickled the scientist in him greatly. The chance to work with the actual system in his own bid to make artificial sacred gears would increase prospective breakthroughs by at least 100-fold. However, the fact that the Harbinger was demanding them for Yusaka's freedom as it were was even more shocking, because with total control in her hands, the world was walking a fine line to doomsday. He wanted to scream at Yusaka to deny her request, but not only did the look on her face show that she was strongly considering Kaguya's offer, but he found that his voice was gone. No matter what he tried, no sound would leave him, obviously Kaguya's attempt to make this decision solely in Yusaka's hands. Yusaka meanwhile was going through a torrent of emotions. Hope at the thought of being free to do as she wished, elation at the idea of finding Kuno a father she could actually count on to love her, fear at the plans Lady Kaguya had in mind for the Ley Lines, intrigued at the truth of what the Ley Lines truly were for, distressed at the plans the Infinite may have had for her daughter's future, confusion at what being removed from the control of the Ley Lines while she still held breath may hold for her own future, and oddly relaxed that Lady Kaguya didn't seem to be forcing her out of Kyoto when she obviously held the ability. Thinking rationally prevailed most of Yusaka's thought processes as she readied herself to respond to Kaguya. "Milady, might I ask a few questions in order to make a better judgment?" "You may. I find no true urgency in your making an informed decision, although I would prefer an answer rather soon. My plans require your presence and that of your daughter sooner than that when I'll need to tap into the system of miracles. Is that so? Then allow me to ask my first question, what are your plans for my daughter?" Yusaka said, hesitance clear in her voice as the woman before her could clearly take her daughter, regardless of her own decision. "Your daughter is to be the first Kyuubi devil hybrid through the evil P system currently in place in Devil Society. I already have the devil in question willing to accept your daughter into their peerage at a moment's notice, despite being unaware of my aims for her. Your daughter is to be protected by my collaborator, of whom I can assure you would allow no harm to come to her. Besides this, I can assure you that your daughter is going to be in one of the most desirable peerages this side of an actual Satan," Kaguya said, drawing an inquisitive look from Yusaka since Kuno was already a half-human from Yusaka, giving into a heat with a human just over 3 decades ago. "May I ask further questions related to that?" "Excuse my insolence, Milady, but my daughter's future means more to me than any offer an infinite such as yourself can provide. Your daughter is to be placed in the peerage of Ria's Gremory, daughter of the Crimson Satan. My collaborator is arguably stronger than any listed in this world's 10 most powerful, besides the Infinite on the list, thus my complete faith in her safety. The reason I need your daughter in this station is precisely because of her human and Kyuubi heritage. I hope this appeases any comments regarding your daughter," Kaguya said, listing off the answers to Yusaka's question before she could even verbalize them. Yes, Milady. I guess onto my next question, what is it that you need of my presence? Would I be free to see my Kuno at any time, and would I be forced to leave my political station?" Yusaka asked, this time a little less open-ended with her questions and the need for precise answers. She was the leader of the Yakai faction, and her presence was needed in some extent of the leadership of the many different demon races. It was precisely because the last time she was physically indisposed from the decision-making process, when she was giving birth to Kuno, the massacre of the Nekashu race happened. Such a massive loss based on simple lack of communication between the Devil and Yakai factions, which to this day remained a tense issue when addressing any issue related to the Devils. She imagined if a devil himself came before her asking to turn Kuno into a devil, they might end up as a pile of ash before her foxfire. "It is not I who asked of your presence, but that of my collaborator. He has a desire to learn of your way in using chakra, as that of a full-blood Kyuubi. I refuse to say any more regarding his aim, as that shall be left between the two of you. However, I believe the situation would be equally beneficial to you knowing him as I do. Given what I said regarding your daughter, I believe your second question needs no further answer, and in regards to your station, the Crow here has plans to pick up and move to Kuo, leaving his subordinates with complete authority over his failing faction, so whether you pass your leadership off or not matters little. I can tell you of another thing that might interest you in this decision however, that being Leviathan has broken the mold." First Kaguya responded, drawing Yusaka and Azazel's interest at her mention of Leviathan. Seraphol renounced her title. "When? Why?" "Excuse me, Milady, these questions are not directed to you. However, might I assume your collaborator is Naruto Uzumaki, then?" Yusaka asked, Azazel also putting the pieces together as he was forced to sit through this conversation almost ignored by the women before him. The longer they talked, the more things the fallen angel needed to discuss with various others. Michael would no doubt be furious at the Harbinger's plans to tamper with the system of miracle at some point. Then there was Seraphol who had asked him to arrange a meeting with Naruto Uzumaki, Yusaka, and herself, but had apparently given up her title as Mayu at some point between when he spoke with her yesterday, while she was in the underworld's capital of Lilith and now. What purpose would she have for an official request using her title if she wasn't even going to have the title when it was most needed? Also of concerning nature was that the Harbinger was extremely focused on anything related to Naruto Uzumaki. This fact alone made Azazel concerned to the potential type of person he may or may not be, if only based on the past history he knew of the Harbinger Void. If you call me the Harbinger one more time, you will cease to exist, and none henceforth shall have any memory of your existence prior to today. Do you know just how easy it would be for me to remove all memory and physical evidence of 9,000 years of your life's monumental history from all life as you know it, Crow? You shall refer to me as the Rabbit Goddess, a name I have grown quite fond of. Anyone you wish to speak of myself about, I am the Rabbit Goddess. Even thinking of my presence, I am the Rabbit Goddess. Am I clear or must I make an example? Kaguya spoke to Azazel, a pitch-black miasma of killing intent filled the whole of the shrine, such as that of a fog coming off a bay to settle inland. The intent froze Azazel where he stood, unable to speak as Kaguya still had some power forcing back his voice, leaving the fallen with little more to answer than an emphatic nod of his head to stress the urgency in his understanding. Meanwhile Yaka saw this and felt completely unaffected from Kaguya's intent, such that there was a field of almost, but not actual light protecting her. It almost felt to Yaka that she had become one with the void from whence Kaguya was named for during this moment, which would be completely baseless, as the Kyuubi had nothing to base such a hypothesis off of. Still, the feeling was curious to say the least. If anything, Yaka was more interested in just why she was getting what seemed as preferential treatment from the Infinite, whom referred to herself keenly as the Rabbit Goddess, quite honestly the best name one might give the woman, if not trying to openly offend or flatter. The neutral title if best decided upon is always the easiest option in avoiding potential problems. In the case of an Infinite, it was the best option one might have. Now Yaka, your assumption is correct. Let me assure you, he is quite eager to meet you and yours. I shan't speak any more of him however, as I want your answer. If you will, my dear Rabbit Goddess Kaguya-sama, you and your daughter may address myself as such. Yes, Lady Kaguya, I have a final question regarding the ley lines themselves before I can give my answer. I'm to understand you desire to call upon the power of the system of miracles as you said through the ley lines. Would this process endanger my people, the city of Kyoto, or the world itself? Yaka said, a look of serious contemplation as she regarding Kaguya's every movement, looking for any tell at what the answer may be. This was her primary duty that she was giving up, which entailed the safety of all around. Everything wrote on the answer to this question. Viz Wakahisa, I have no intention at all of touching the ley lines. That will be up to Naruto only when he has overcome that which holds him back from his pure undiluted potential as the multiverse's newest infinite. However, there is a strong chance that he will not awaken and my interests lie in betting against him. I don't even need to hamper his progress with nothingness, illusion, and apocalypse in the same world. And there are two others which may further impede his progress and quite possibly have similar infinite qualities that shall go nameless. Honestly, befriending Naruto Uzumaki may have been my greatest goal in an all too long and empty life. Kaguya started to say in her answer to Yaka's final question, with a contemplative sigh as she talked of her own life. As to potential harm to your people, Kyoto, and the world as a whole. Whilst Naruto himself would never do such a thing purposely, I can assure you that nothing is certain and everything is permitted. Just because he would not do it doesn't mean others wouldn't. The ley lines are an important part of the world, specifically to controlling the continuation of life, and you as well as he are some of the very few people who have a measure of control over it, with the propensity to not misuse such power. Many others have not such misgivings, nor the conscience to care about such things as honor and respect. To these people, if they survive then everything else is an acceptable loss. Even that of their own partners and subordinates. Be mindful of this and give me your answer. Wakahisa Kaguya finished, drawing concerned looks from both Yaka and Azazel. Azazel knew of the Cows Brigade, and when Serapho reached out to request his assistance in this matter, he made certain that upon meeting the alien, he would inform her of everything he had on them, knowing they were behind most of the actions terrorizing the human and supernatural worlds. The rise of these actions in the week since Naruto's arrival only solidified the idea that peace between the factions was the only answer to combat the growing violence that would surely lead to the end of all their races. Learning that the ley lines were going to be targeted at some point definitely helped some matters, as did the fact that the Rabbit Goddess had no intention to touch them. Still she knew of others that had the innate potential to become infinite. This was becoming a mess, most of all because only the infinite knew what was required to be infinite and identifying threats was a priority. Right now, the governor's best guess was that the system of miracles was involved somehow, but to what end remained unclear. God did create the system after he was already an infinite, so it was like asking what came first, chicken or egg. Yaka meanwhile deliberated everything she was told. Truthfully, Lady Kaguya presented more benefits to her and hers than potential problems. Her daughter would be safe, she wouldn't be confined to leaving Kyoto for only short periods of time, her position could be kept if desired or passed on to the likes of Yukakas if truly necessary. There were even interesting things like the fact that one of the Mayu left their position that Yasaka could use to her own advantage when it came to internal politics. Really, everything hinged on just one factor, and thus Yasaka answered, "I require a week to prepare." Is that acceptable, Lady Kaguya? My dear, if you had planned to say anything otherwise, this deal would never have even been offered. This was always how you were meant to play the game, and in truth, your arrival in Kuo a week from tonight shall be most entertaining. Kaguya smirked for a minute before projecting a dimensional portal over Azazel, and he was removed from the shrine. Now pretty fox, the rabbit gets to feast. Kaguya said before a portal appeared behind Yasaka, followed by Kaguya appearing behind the buxom Kyuubi, left hand grabbing her left breast, and the right hand reached around the golden fox demon's head to turn it to the right, thereby allowing the seemingly ageless goddess to initiate a kiss, as an unknown power flowed from Kaguya into Yasaka and back, at which point Kaguya released the woman who promptly fell to the ground, drained because of the exchange. However, before she could hit the ground, Yasaka was stopped by a force, preventing any injury upon her. Kaguya holding her hand toward Yasaka said, "Yes, you shall do very nicely, Yasaka Wakahisa. Naruto would be quite unhappy if I were to allow harm to come to you. Rest now, and in a week's time, you and your daughter shall arrive in Kuo to witness a grand sight. Be prepared accordingly." Kaguya gently laid down the leader of the Yakai faction on a tatami mat near the far end of the shrine's great hall, where she promptly fell asleep. Kaguya then disappeared in another portal, knowing her business this night was not finished just yet. Unknown location, 7:15 p.m. Office-sama NYAN, how may I be of service? Kuroka said to the being she would probably consider closest to her true master. However, even thinking as such, Kuroka's true nature was that of a cat. Bowing to none and acting as only her interests desired. This was largely due to being one of the two remaining Nekashu in the world, despite the unhindered numbers of Nekomata in the world who couldn't use Senjutsu. Kuroka was dressed in a large and loose dark black kimono on the outside and bright red on the inside, which was held by a bright yellow obi, and on it large yellow beads that hung on the untied ends. The obi was in place higher than one would typically see, as it mainly started just under Kuroka's impressive bust to just above where her belly button might be positioned. This had the adverse effect of leaving her kimono to freely show her lower body in all its glory based on her own movement, something she took full advantage of with her seductive nature. Her kimono also held loosely on her and just barely managed to cover them, the article of clothing being so large that it freely hung around her shoulders rather than positioned on them. Given the size of her bust in comparison to her kimono, this likely explained the reason why she had her obi tied up higher than one might otherwise. The kimono finally held wide, unrestricting sleeves over her arms, allowing for a vast range of movement while leaving others unaware. The Nekashu wasn't a particularly tall woman, however, given her long uncovered legs, lack of undergarments, and large, she managed to maintain an appearance that held her own in a world dominated by the idea that larger is better. This was further improved by her status as the only reincarnated devil who required 2 bishops to enter a peerage. The Nekashu held rich black hair and cat ears that contrasted very well against her pale skin tone. If one were to notice her behind, they would see her kimono was split in the back, allowing her 2 black cattails to move as they will. On the female's head behind her ears sat a headdress or crown of sorts that looked to be obsidian in nature, with small golden designs inlet in it and silver-colored bands just inside the width of her cat ears. The piece was a gift from her mother, said to hold special properties when used in conjunction with Senjutsu, and was Kuroka's one true treasure she would never let go of. Kuroka. Our time is short. Void is upon the world once again, and despite her intention of leaving myself be, she will come to me for something. I have no intention to deny her in so long as she lets me reclaim my silence. She would help me do so only because of who she has at her side, the alien. Office said, looking upon one of her most trusted servants. The look in Kuroka's eyes as Office told her that another infinite would take the Nekashu soon was that of betrayal at first. Betrayal turned to interest at the mention that the one coming to take her was working with the alien. The alien was a hot topic among Senjutsu using Yakai, as ever since his arrival the madness that accompanied the use of Senjutsu was lessened, almost as if his very presence was taking on all the hatred nature held and purifying the life energy. It was not a big change yet, as there was thousands and thousands of years for nature to garner such malcontent, but those who few had taken the initiative to get close to the alien did notice the change was there. Kuroka herself had taken the initiative because of his proximity to the only other thing Kuroka truly cared for, her dear Shirin. Nyan, alien-kun. I would love to dig my claws into him, Nyan, but why does Void want me? You must know her aim and what purpose she has. Kuroka said somewhat excitedly. The alien held the very essence of nature at his beck and call, freely able to mold it to his beck and call, doing things with it even she could only dream of. The chakra he held deep inside of him that she was only able to detect because of her senjutsu ran wild within him and he was able to hide it, but his body's aura was unrestrained and uninhibited, allowing his control over nature to be affected by whatever his emotional state may be. This was why his power ran so freely over the world upon his exit immediately after arriving from the void of the dimensional gap and the following battle when he attacked the murderer of the Red Dragon Emperor. It was such that even with his chakra concealed from the world as it was, his aura controlled the world around him unknowingly. Aura attracted power and only users of senjutsu, mages, and those who held such large magical powers that they likewise needed to learn to control their aura themselves, lest their power causes adverse effects to the world around them, would detect the power he was subconsciously releasing over the entire nation of Japan. Void wishes to use the alien to bring the infinite back to 5. I can only answer that regarding her goal. The alien however wants you and you should not deny whatever his aim is. He represents a greater role than you know. The only thing that matters is you not upset Harbinger when she arrives. She has always been particular and easily angered, something that you likely will incite. Until you stand by the alien, know that Harbinger is always a threat to you, to everything. Her power is void, an ability that can affect dimensional spaces and to an extent time, my nothingness which can introduce or remove power in its pure state that was born through her power, can only serve purpose in conjunction with her own, rather than combating against it. This is the way we all are and why clashing between us is forbidden. Illusion can only be quelled by void, void by disorder, disorder by emotion, emotion by nothingness, and nothingness falls to illusion. Office explained, drawing an interested look out of Kuroka. One didn't learn secrets regarding the world's most powerful existences every day after all. The alien represents the power emotion, gaining increased power through his own emotions and that of the emotions of those around him. The biblical God, the former infinite of emotion, was the only being that could truly defeat Trahixa, the infinite of disorder, and with his death when he sealed Trahixa, the gap represented from the loss of emotion, stunted humanity's ability to understand one another in a way that transcends words and actions. This loss has likewise affected the state of the multiverse, causing fissures to open, leading to things such as the madness that is consistent in the senjutsu and other minor aspects, which are unnoticed to most natural life. The sealing of disorder and the disappearance of void for so long has further altered the state of the world to a perilous point that existence was nearly threatened in its balance. Illusion and nothingness can only provide so much support by themselves, and life has been impacted greatly since emotion died in the human year 1291. This was especially noticeable in the years immediately after his death and Trahixa being sealed away, as void had already been gone from the world for 3,000 years, and Earth went through the violent end of its dark ages. Office told her servant in hopes that with this knowledge she could serve to understand the world and who she would be serving under to greater ability. Then why this all sounds so exciting. So because of Alien Kun's power over emotion, he can be the greatest lover of all men. Kuroka needs to repopulate the world with Nekashu kittens and Alien Kun sounds like the best candidate with Vali Kun being such a prude. Kuroka said, obviously even more excited with her new assignment. Suddenly a portal opened up behind Kuroka, which she only barely felt. From it Kaguya appeared, earning a frown from the infinite who embodied nothingness. Office, I trust you know why I'm here. The infinite of void said in a haughty tone of voice, as she knew that Office would not fight back right now. The time for fighting between them was something of the past, as if they were children bickering. Now they had the life experience to at least be civil with one another, even if they didn't want to. Kaguya, this is the one he desired, Kuroka. I trust you will take her to him immediately despite coming earlier than you stated you would. Office said to her counterpart, drawing another interested look from Kuroka. Knowing that Alien Kun had personally asked for her rather than Void coming of her own initiative brought a warm feeling of both lust and purpose. It only furthered her desire to serve the man who would become her master. Kuroka knowingly licked her lips in anticipation. We shall be seeing one of him immediately, of that I can assure you, Office. However, Naruto is not a man of a singular nature as you know, and we shall not be seeing his original upon my return with this Hellcat. I have unintentionally angered him, and one of his clones was running another task of importance. We shall go to it, as I'd like to get his personal thoughts on that matter. Besides, Kitty here will be interested I think. With that Kaguya turned to look at Kuroka and nodded to her. Yes, she will be very interested in that. Kuroka, from this point you no longer answer to myself, Vali, or any other member of the Cows Brigade. I trust you know that this means you are not obligated to say anything to anyone should you so wish, but also you are free to tell anything if you like. You have always held loyalty to those worthy of trust and respect, and this falls under such an ideal. Your nature is whimsical and if something strikes your fancy you have always done as you wanted. Don't change who you are, as I believe emotion in particular is drawn and empowered by such action. Emotion is needed to awaken now more than ever, as Trahixa stirs within his seal. By pushing emotion down the path and manifesting use of all his power, the world shall regain the balance. Now go and release the Hellcat on the world once more. Office advised her former subordinate, who looked all too happy to oblige. Now here kitty kitty. The rabbit hole is waiting to attract some prime, Kaguya hissed as she opened a portal behind Kuroka and proceeded to push the Nekashu devil hybrid into one of her personal worlds before disappearing herself. Office had a blank look as she watched the portal swallow Kuroka and Kaguya, knowing that emotion needed awakening immediately. Even if the cost was one of her best. Aiding in emotions awakening was the deal Void came to her with in removing illusion from her home, and she needed the silence. Personal interests may seem petty, but even she knew that there was more riding on emotions revival than her own desires. Streets of Kuo Town, 7:30 p.m. Naruko walked back to Issei's former house, her thoughts still on Kiru Yaka. The boss had wanted her checked out when he felt her attachment to the supernatural world, and she was concerned that the magician could sense her, among other issues. The reason she was walking at all instead of just dispelling was related in part to her muddled thoughts. She also needed to give the boss time with that arena girl to explain why she had been given the boosted gear. He needed to focus on one thing at a time, and the perverted female was going to be a big issue in the coming days. Of course, as a piece of Naruto Uzumaki's personality was present in each and every clone he made, a part of Naruko found this walking while dressed so provocatively to be completely and utterly degrading. Yet, at the same time this offered up so much potential to prank the boss in ways never before possible. Kiru Yaka, she-devil magician that she was, would prove invaluable on such a front, but that would only matter if she would be present for extended periods of time. This was highly unlikely, but still the thought of a little fun at the expense of the boss was too much fun to deny. Just then, Naruko felt the increasingly familiar trace of a nearby dimensional disturbance. Such a feeling typically signaled Granny Rabbit arriving. However, absolutely no good reason she could think of why she would come to her. Given that this incarnation of Naruko knew that the goddess had pissed off the boss earlier, showing herself before Naruko was almost as bad as appearing before the boss. Hell, even the clone was slightly upset over what happened. Anything involving a seal being forcefully opened would piss off a fragment of Naruto Uzumaki's personality. Even chakra fragments have begun showing no respect for my greatness, Kaguya huffed, no matter. I know exactly what I'll do with you when the time is right, little girl. The woman immediately vanished with the use of her dimensional powers, a manner untraceable to the clone. She then reappeared behind Naruko, grabbing her head so that it was tilted slightly to right and placing a finger against her left temple. She then flared her power for a moment before pulling a string of chakra from the girl which detached and left the clone seemingly unharmed, if on her guard. What did you do to me, Kaguya? The blonde all but screamed. Kaguya still wasn't necessarily an ally, and even though she'd made some strides to say that she was no longer completely bent on world domination, her seemingly random actions made it clear that she still very much carried her own agenda. I have done nothing that will cause permanent or even temporary harm. Let's just say I'm making an insurance policy. The progenitor of chakras stated simply. Naruko for her part was caught completely off guard by the statement and had no idea what an insurance policy would mean to the woman who was the boss's most powerful enemy at one point. To this day, Naruto was still unsure just what her true motivation was, even if she did said she would help him on this journey. Now on to business, girl. I have the cat with me and the foxes arrive in a week. Are you done with the magician, girl? She then asked, purposely changing the topic. However, it was quite the wrong direction to steer the conversation. Wait, you knew Kiru was a mage? Asked a female clone angrily. Damn it, Granny, you told the boss after the meeting with Surziches a week ago that you would tell about stuff like that. Why didn't you say anything knowing he is looking for people who have ties to different factions? She knows way too much just based off guesswork, and it makes her extremely useful in the plan. You can't just leave surprises like that for us, will him? Naruko sighed. It was more than a little frustrating. After all, Naruto was not an information gathering specialist. Kaguya, however, looked completely undeterred by her rant. Girl, do you expect everything handed to you or him on some silver platter? Her words were sharp and harsh as she spoke up, making Naruko flinch. If he wishes to truly become infinite and fulfill the task that my son left for him, he must be all-knowing. You and he already have everything needed to make that happen. The ability to connect with people through their emotions is a strength far greater than you realize. Or, her normal eyes narrowed, third eye unaffected, do you truly wish for the end? Since he seems to be a dunce in everything that doesn't involve overpowering or outlasting an enemy in combat, and you unknowingly picked up all his traits to make a fantastic ditz, let me spell things out in a way you can understand. Everything, all actions you take and every breath you make, all of this is a test. His very will must be pushed to extremes in order to survive, and that means the others of his nameless horde and you in particular must help overcome his unending hardships. Naruko was again caught off guard. Why is she telling me this? If Naruto's the one who needs to learn that lesson, what is she trying to tell me? What does she mean, you in particular anyway? Then she gasped as the details fell into place in her head. The creation of all things technique was certainly within Kaguya's power, and the not-so-subtle hints she dropped all led Naruto to see the woman before her wanted the clone to be an independent person. Kaguya paid no heed to Naruko's musing as she continued, as the saying goes, behind every good man is a greater woman. Well, guess what, little girl? You are that woman now. I've given you the ability to make yourself appear as needed, free of his jutsu. You hold all his thoughts, desires, and experience. You can continue to gain his new knowledge and fantasies, but you shall be clone that doesn't share her own private thoughts. Through this you will retain individuality amongst his numbers, with his heart at your command if you so choose. The statuesque woman paced around the female clone, eyes fixed on some unseen point. He needs this now, more than ever in this new world where he stands alone from all he once knew, and it shall last until I can truly make you the being I need you to become. Naruto-kun will provide miracles beyond that of his lifetime, I know this is fact, she stated firmly, I'm only here to provide clues and guide his growth, so he that might not make the mistakes that other infinite have made. I can and will leave at any given time for my own affairs. He didn't want this life, but he never had a choice, like myself and like every other infinite. Where he goes after the 5 reunite is entirely up to him. This plan in gathering the overpowered mortals of this world is to guide his growth and teach him things that can prove especially helpful in times I choose to leave. I cannot be depended on with everything. She held out Kuroka's limp body to a nonplussed Naruto. Now, take this cat to him and offer my condolences for that church girl before. Kaguya thought for a moment, this is for the best. The boy has too much potential and so many traits that get in the way of his progress. Whether he would accept it is unquestioned, he would never deny this. But whether or not he'd approve of my actions is another matter. Only the moment when I call him back will decide that. I just hope it works. So thinking, she then opened a dimensional portal over Naruto, which subsequently dropped a black cat unceremoniously onto the blonde clone. This was followed by a look of concern to the female clone before the elder goddess disappeared. 9. Yowled the cat, you're not my alien kun Naya. Funya, but if that void lady brought me to you, then you must be alien Chan, Naya. Kuroka looked down at the female she landed on, clearly wanting an explanation. Before that however, the devil suddenly transformed into her hybrid human Nekashu form and grabbing the blonde girl in a hug as they both fell to the grassy ground. What a splendid aura you have Nyan. Heya, sexy kitty Naruko greeted with a smirk, how you doing? Can you let me up? We need to go see the boss like now. The awkward meter was way off the chart at this point. After the chat with Kaguya, the clone just wanted to boss to dispel her already. But she wouldn't deny that Granny Rabbit did a fantastic job in deciding a senjutsu expert of this world with ties to the terrorist faction. Kuroka tilted her head, brow furrowing in curiosity. Naya, I thought she was taking me to see Alien Kun. She asked, if you're not him, then why does your senjutsu and chakra feel exactly like his? Being a demon who used that same power, she was honestly interested in chakra that the alien used. Kuroka could feel the distinct presence of the 2 chakra sources that had emerged from the dimensional portal in Kuo City. One belonged to the girl before her and the other lay off in the distance, where she could also feel Shirin. The stray cat could feel no difference between the two, something that was just not possible. Not even identical twins felt that way, the very being of a person can't be the same. But the girl before her was out of place, she didn't belong. Senjutsu traces were much harder to pick up unless in close proximity, so until she met Alien Kun she couldn't truly know. It seemed not even the laws of existence could properly explain how this one person could in fact look both left and right at the same time. Naruko sighed. Well, to make things short, lem just show you. She made the familiar crossed hand seal, molding the chakra throughout her body before 3 clones, then appeared at her sides and behind her. Odd, I didn't want to do a sexy jutsu, what did Granny Rabbit do? Kuroka was enthusiastic at the idea of molding the chakra in the body to make clones, nothing like her own illusion clones, which used the surroundings' natural chakra. She reached out to one of the clones in curiosity and pinched it. The reaction left the Nekashu speechless. Ow. Watch out damn it. The clone jerked back, pulling her breast from Kuroka's impromptu titty twister before dispelling altogether. Clearly the clone wasn't in a playful mood, but obviously that clone had never heard the phrase curiosity killed the cat. The 2 other clones could clearly see the implications working their way through Kuroka's brain as she suddenly developed a bloody nose. The clones turned to smoke as the Nekashu's thought process began to reboot, dispelling both with a liberal pinch, and the stray cat all but yelled at Naruko, take me to my master, Alien Chan. I need to meet my alien kun. With those words, she seized the clone by the arm and took her kicking and screaming to the home of Naruto Uzumaki. Haidu residence, 8 p.m. Naruto Uzumaki had just spent the better part of the last hour and a half conversing per se with the holy sword Durandal via use of his chakra. He could feel the sword's wildly flowing power from the moment Granny Rabbit unsealed it from Zenobia, and he wanted to understand what could give such an aura to the blade. Needless to say, he was quite surprised to find the blade held ascensions through the vast holy power held within the blade. Seeing the historical battle of Roland versus 100,000 Muslim warriors during what he knew was the Great War that the supernatural factions nearly brought themselves to extinction with from the perspective of a sword was something of an enlightening experience to say the least. Who knew that a blade could gain a form of semi-sentience from bloody death throes of 100,000 would-be thieves? Though to be honest, having relics like St. Peter's tooth, blood of St. Basil, hair of St. Denis, pieces of robe of St. Mary, weird as it may seem, may in fact have influenced the system of miracles to give the sword life. Although, the fact that Durandal could even think of feel could only happen because of God's death, making the sword indestructible as the legend of Roland stated. Regardless, the ferocity of the blade's aura was stunting Zenovia's growth, evident in her need to have it sealed away at all times when not needed. The girl clearly needed to earn the sword's trust in battle, but given its bloody history and that of its wielders, just any battle wouldn't cut it. Durandal was a blade that considered the purpose of its use as more important than how it was used. It was a blade that was more than just an extension of oneself, it was a blade that would only act in concert with ideals the likes of the very saints whose relics it was made with would hold in esteem. Such things were extremely varied though, and Durandal was not like say, Samahata, in the sense that it would actually tell you what it wanted. If it could be said that Samahata worked like that, Durandal was a blade that truly functioned on the idea of ninshuu and needed the wielder's emotions to run as the means of communication. Honestly, Naruto was fascinated by the sword and wanted nothing more than to watch Zenobia in an actual life or death battle to see just how she spoke with it. "Oh, my head," Irina groaned, drawing his attention as she returned slowly to consciousness. "I just had the weirdest dreams. Dreams of war, dreams of lies, dreams of dragons fire. There was fighting between dragons, a red dragon who took me to see my beloved Issei-kun, and then Issei tried to grope me, but light kept knocking away, but Issei died." She cradled her head in her hands, mumbling to herself. Naruto looked on as Irina shook off the delirium her fainting spell. He had placed her and Zenobia on the nearby couches while he spoke with Durandal. The brunette twin-tailed girl had only sat up, but she appeared to be completely oblivious to her location, the people around her, and even what happened prior to her collapse. Even more surprising was that she seemed to acting like waking up from random crazy dreams might be a common occurrence. Irina suddenly bowed her and put her hands together. "Oh, Almighty God, please offer forgiveness to your humble servant in her delusions. It pains me to accept his loss, but I must admit Issei forsook your ways to become a devil, and our love was always to be unrequited. My love for you is everlasting, as you have guided my life through all hardships and blessings. I'm certain that you still have a plan for me, even without Issei-kun at my side. Amen." If Naruto remembered correctly, the being she was praying to had been the infinite of emotion before him. More importantly, he was impressed that she barely seemed to draw a breath through all of that. Her faith was obviously extremely important to her, so maybe his plan might shatter her, but hopefully it would go off without a hitch. "Hey sleepyhead, did you get the chance to have a nice chat with Dragon Issei?" asked the young man, crouching by her. "I didn't get the chance to speak with Issei when I was holding Drake for the last week, but the red dragon seemed to be a stand-up guy to spend the rest of your days holding inside you. Take it from me, well, people call them sacred gears, from what I can tell something like the boosted gear being called a mere object is a tremendous disservice to the soul residing inside of it. See, just being a Jinchuriki is a lot more awesome than think. Although you met a few short hours ago. So Rina-chan, guess what? You're going to be my personal student from today forth. We're going to have a lot of fun." Okay, Naruto trailed off in a sing-song tone of voice, completely ignoring the look of shock on Irina's face as she realized her dream was no dream and that she truly did meet a dragon and her beloved Issei. "Naruto-kun." Irina looked to the blonde, only now just recognizing him. The girl shook as she tried to form basic thoughts in effort to ask informative questions. The answers could help solve a very important riddle that the Seraphim Gabriel had given her and Zenobia before they'd left. The presence of one of the four great seraph, rather than Griselda, giving out new information, had sent a shock to both the girls. Yet at the time, Irina didn't really care, as the information of Boosted Gear's disappearance brought with it news of Issei's death. Now she was getting a full-blown miracle of God himself at the news that Naruto was giving her the sacred gear of her dead childhood friend and first crush. But first, she wanted to know why. Not necessarily for the church, although they would definitely get a report first thing. No, she wanted to know why Naruto had found her and gave her boosted gear when he could have kept it for himself. "What did you mean you were holding boosted gear?" she asked first. "My mission briefing said that disappeared completely from the system of miracles after Issei's death. What was so special about me that made you choose to give me the powers of a dragon? Never mind that for now, how come you were able to give me this blessing in the first place?" On and on she went, not even stopping to give Naruto a chance to answer. Passing a sacred gear from person to person only happens after the death of the previous holder, right? The relic moves back into the system of miracles. After a soul has passed on, God himself grants the sacred gear upon the soul of the next wielder while still in the womb. Alien to this world or not, you have performed an act of God, Naruto-kun. It should be impossible for an outsider to interfere with God's domain. Irina's breath quickened as she began to panic, her own questions leading her thoughts to dark places. Naruto knew this would happen. When he and Granny Rabbit began the plan to pick out potential players in each faction, she warned how faith was a very real factor in the powers of infinite. It also trickled down into the daily life of the followers of each faction, as she labeled believers. Obviously the girl was coming to an erroneous conclusion that would only hurt her. Faith held a big influence over the world, after all. Putting two and two together, she might think that he was the god she'd been praying to all these years, or she might even realize that the throne of her god was empty. According to Kaguya, some people's faith ran so strong that learning of their higher power's absence lead to catastrophic results. Something about a metaphysical reaction with their soul, space-time, and the world around them. When the rabbit-horned woman had told him this, Naruto hadn't fully understood the consequences portion of their chat. He was busy ignoring her, focusing on a meeting with Surziches from earlier that day. Honestly, the very fact that he remembered that part of the conversation is surprising. Rafia had the nerve to say that Naruto, as an alien to this dimension, didn't even have the right to be called a human. Not a new insult to the young man by any means, but nevertheless one that touched a nerve. And so, he was plotting a proper vengeance. But the silverettes each and every action, the blonde just felt that the devil had some pain or regret of her own and took it out on anyone that she somehow felt deserving. She would totally get hers in time. But back to Irina, Naruto was well aware she would come across the truth eventually. According to his infinite companion, the long and short of it would most definitely involve her soul becoming tainted. The truth should come from a trusted source, but Naruto didn't know anyone who could fill that role. Things were even more difficult, what with Granny Rabbit spilling the beans to Zenobia after pulling Durandal out of the brunette girl's seal. Naruto just didn't feel ready to become God in anybody's eyes yet. So what if he regularly pulled off acts of God in this world or not? Hell, he didn't even want to become some holier-than-thou infinite, but damned if he had any choice. Beings of all races couldn't understand each other and were taking every chance to battle it out. It was only a matter of time before the real warmongers got all their pieces in place. Damn pigs. No, Naruto needed to get Irina to accept that the emotion as she knew him was long gone. She needs to move on. Find a different god to worship, the blonde thought for a minute and smirked, knowing where the buck stopped. The only question was how in Granny Rabbit's wood-chipped ass was he gonna pull it off. Irina was still panting and started shaking as she looked upon Naruto's face with wide eyes. She waited for some kind of sign that he was going to answer her questions, for proof that she was before her almighty lord, who must have left heaven unattended without telling the seraphim. As her musing continued, suddenly dimensional portals opened up all throughout the room and unknown attacks fired at Naruto from all directions. "Damn it, Granny!" Naruto yelled. But internally he felt that he could almost kiss his former enemy. It was sheer brilliance to use that attack as retaliation at that specific moment. He speedily replaced himself with logs to avoid the all-killing ash bones, the wooden chunks appearing from seemingly nowhere. However, in reality some of the uses were unnecessary. Several spears of bone missed their targets entirely, a deliberate move on Naruto's part. Some needed to land randomly without damage in the room for Irina to see. Then the attack started building in speed, making Naruto have a harder time and avoiding collateral damage around the front room that he, Irina, Zenobia, and one of his clones were currently occupying, never mind the upper floors of the building. Naruto also noticed that attacks he let slip by the logs he replaced himself with were steadily eroding the walls and furniture they hit, doing exactly what the technique does best, removing objects from existence. Naruto suddenly noticed two different attacks that were not aimed at him anyway. Granny was either pushing her luck or she was telegraphing on purpose. Or maybe even both, since the attacks would still require him and his clones to replace more than just Zenobia and Irina. If he didn't, then the attacks would fire at the ceiling and make secondary targets of Ravel, Riaz and Asia and the floor above. How the rabbit goddess had managed to make those holes so perfectly during this assault when not even present was a mystery to Naruto. First, though, he had to save quite a few girls and show them their true lord and savior. Irina watched, keeping stock still as Naruto avoided the attacks appearing all throughout the room. Seeing the blonde make logs of all things appear out of nowhere only reinforced her thought that he was indeed her Lord Almighty God. There was no other way to explain his miraculous actions. People had called him an alien, without proof that he did come from another world or confirmation he was mortal, it was clear for her. This man was without question a deity walking the earth. Suddenly the twin-tailed girl was ripped out of her musing when she was violently grabbed. In a flash, she found herself across the room, her eyes fixing on a piece of redwood where she was just standing, disintegrating. And just like that, her stomach caught up to her. As she dry heaved, she felt a rush of air beside her. The brunette exorcist briefly realized that Naruto was next to her before he teleported her again to a different corner of the room. Still favoring her stomach, she noticed the second Naruto from earlier, holding Zenobia-chan in its arms. A piece of cherry wood was splintered on the ground where she'd laid on the couch. The sheer speed at which he moved was astounding to the girl. More so that he was going out of his way to ensure their safety from attacks. Irina was certain Zenobia wouldn't be able to avoid them if she were at 100%. And Zenobia was a far more gifted combatant than she could claim to be. To see someone who looked their age avoiding such attacks with unbridled ease was shocking. Especially since it seemed to be only one move, repeated over and over. Naruto's actions spoke of experience well beyond his years. Suddenly, Naruto noticed another all-killing ash bone portal open directly above Asia. Granny Rabbit was certainly helping him on some higher level, but she was really pressing things. She had obviously known his plan and was helping by attacking all directly involved. But she was starting to get things out of hand. He didn't intend for Rias and Ravel to get involved. What purpose did devils have for a god after all? The bone targeting Asia was perfectly angled so that any reaction Naruto took wouldn't wake up Issei's parents, helping matters. Two more portals opened and targeted Ravel and Rias, completely unbeknownst to the naked girls, despite the weakening structure from the holes eroding the walls. Those two, especially Rias, would be put through a situational awareness ringer in the very near future. But for now Naruto's hand was being pushed to the final card. He crossed his hands to create more shadow clones, this time making 6 to substitute all 5 girls in the unconscious Haidu couple, thus allowing him a moment to end the attack. Well, end it as far as the girls themselves would know, anyway. Logs of pine, maple, spruce, and oak littered the floor around him, making perfect substitution fodder to end things easily. The clones quickly grabbed the occupants, leaving more logs in the wake of the almighty substitution jutsu, while Naruto himself tapped into the power of Shukaku. His body gained the typical golden cloak. His unique Rin Sharingan with cross-lit Bijuu sage pupils flared to life for Irina to see. Behind his back suddenly appeared truth-seeking orbs, reminiscent of the Six Paths chakra mode. Forming several hand signs at speeds unrecognized, Naruto unconsciously called out, magnetic release. Infinite levity. At Naruto's words, all the bones stopped and hung in the air wherever they were. Furthermore, the unconscious and uncontrolled nature of Naruto's jutsu caused everyone besides himself to float freely in the air. It was as if he'd suddenly removed all gravity from the surrounding area. Irina drifted helplessly, looking at the man she would now equate to God. Naruto stood dazed, slightly exhausted, yet completely unaware of his actions.